Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Devin Allen, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Pastor Michael Fides from Fielder Church in Arlington. Thank you so much today for coming out. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, we come before you this morning and we recognize who you are and your character. You are above all. You are the King of kings and Lord of lords. Thanks for the opportunity we have this morning to serve our community, to serve our city and nation. We pray this morning that your presence can be in each of the members of this court and your presence can be in this room. We pray for wisdom and clarity as the decisions are made. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Mr. Mingles, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
So we have announcement or two as relates to the agenda this morning.
Not several?
Yes, not several. But as we have in the past, we're going to take certain things out of order. First of all, we are going to, once we get into the administrator section, we are going to go and ask Mr. Tenasia to make his presentation concerning health-related issues in the county. Currently, we do not have any items to go into closed session today unless the court needs to go as far as advice of counsel on anything that might be on the agenda today. But if there isn't, then we do not have closed session today.
That means no lunch.
That's right. There's no lunch.
So we're going to be out here by 12?
Yeah.
There's no lunch. And, I want to take a personal note. We're going to be losing someone who hopefully won't be in court anymore with us starting next week. And Chris Taylor, you are at a point now in your career, and congratulations on becoming a new judge. Mm-hmm. Just remember where you came from. And in going away, just to show you that he still has a sense of humor, I think we have a small video that we would like to show.
We'll treat you with more honor after you actually get on the bench from that perspective.
Chris, no, we won't. Anyway, Mark is going to be with us now, and Mark is going to have to gain a large sense of humor if he's going to survive this crowd. But welcome and good luck.
Welcome, Mark.
Yes, I will say they are still cleaning up that glitter and that stuff. While we're still kind of finding it, it's kind of like glitter in one of those Christmas cards you just keep on finding it for years.
Very eval will reflect that.
Okay. Down here, I'm going to get to the agenda. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of March the 2nd.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. What we got over there? Commissioner
Yes.
Fix. Motion passes unanimously. Proclamations. We've got a couple of things today, and the first one is our Veterans Day proclamation, and we've got our Veteran Service Director, Tom Belton here, who'll come forward. Before we do, I want to just make a comment about Veterans Day. I said what I believe is at this time, I'd like for us to take a moment and reflect on the meaning of this day. It's been said that a nation reveals its character in those it seeks to honor. In this country, no one deserves more honor than our veterans. In their service, in their selflessness, in their sacrifice to make our way of life possible. At one time, each veteran put on a uniform and was willing to risk everything for all of us. This is the time for all of us to say thank you to each veteran. We thank our veterans for their commitment to defending our country. We thank our veterans for their courage in doing so. And we thank our veterans for their conviction that America is worth living for, worth fighting for, and even worth dying for. In Tarrant County, we are proud of the men and women who have served in uniform, and we are praying for those who serve today. I'd like to ask all of us to join me in a moment of silence to honor our veterans on Veterans Day. Thank you. And would all of the veterans please stand and let us recognize you. Now I will ask Thomas to come forward, and I'll read this into the record. Whereas it is appropriate to salute the tens of thousands of men and women who have served and are serving in America's armed forces, and whereas it is recognized that during the past century, hundreds of thousands of Americans have given their lives while serving in the armed forces, and whereas many Tarrant County employees are among the brave men and women who have or are serving in our armed forces, and whereas in November, Veterans Day is set aside as a time to honor those men and women who have so ably served in the armed forces of the United States. And whereas the contributions and sacrifices of the men and women who serve and are serving in the armed forces have been vital in maintaining the freedoms and the way of life enjoyed by the people of the United States. And whereas while we can never hope to fully repay these courageous men and women for their distinguished service to our nation, we can and should show our appreciation for their sacrifice. And whereas Veterans Day is observed on November the 11th, regardless of what day of the week on which it falls, to preserve the historical significance of the date and to focus attention on the important purpose of Veterans Day, a celebration to honor American veterans for their patriotism, love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby recognize the week of November 8th through 12th, 2021, as Veterans Awareness Week, and extend our deepest gratitude and appreciation to the men and women who have served in our armed forces, in witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 9th day of November 2021. I'll move its approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Tom, thank you for representing veterans and for all to do to help them in this process. Get our picture.
Thank you very much, Judge. I'd like to thank the Tarrant County leadership, the commissioners, for their undying support for our veterans in Tarrant County. I'd like to thank all the veterans here today, as well as those that serve on our court, for signing that blank check that every veteran has signed, whether or not they serve 4 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. They went in there, less than 1% of Americans ever serve in our armed forces. And that says a lot about the character of the people that volunteer and the people that continuously support our veterans, and we appreciate you as much as you appreciate us. At this time, I'd like to introduce Melissa Castillo, who is the current president of the Veteran Service Officer Association of Texas, who will be making a presentation here to one of our veterans today. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you. Good morning, Judge. Good morning, Commissioners. At this time, I would like to ask Mr. Juan Rios to join me up here in the podium.
Sorry, take your time.
So thank you for giving me this opportunity to recognize Mr. Rios as an outstanding County Veteran Service Officer of the Year for the Northwest region. My name is Melissa Castillo. I am the president of the County Veteran Service Officer Association of Texas. Each year, the association recognizes county veteran service officers from across the state of Texas for their outstanding service and commitment to veterans, surviving spouses, and dependents. Mr. Rios is a U.S. Army veteran. 8 years ago, Mr. Rios started as a VSO for Tarrant County. Even though most of us were slowed down by the pandemic did not slow Mr. Rios down. He has dedicated himself to assisting his community, at times with assisting with our local electives. He has assisted over 1,100 veterans this fiscal year in acquiring over $600,000 in monetary benefits from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Mr. Rios has assisted the office in transition from paper to digital submission of claims. This has led to savings of the supply budget. He has helped the VSO department budget in properly maintaining and allocating funds without any overusage. Mr. Rios worked with the community developed personnel to finalize the home renovation projects and utilize funds received by the Texas Veterans Commission. Finally, Mr. Rios was instrumental in connecting with the Texas Veterans Land Board and Tarrant County leadership that led to the donation of the 12 acres for the construction of the newly state veterans home. Mr. Rios can add this current award to his latest recognition from the Texas Veterans Commission as the County Service Officer of the North Texas region for FY 2020. Juan, thank you for your service to our grateful nation and your continued service to our veterans.
All I have to say is that I love what I do. I love everything that us veterans stand for, and I couldn't do it with the leadership and with the friends that I have that I work with every day. Thank you, everyone.
Congratulations.
Juan, we appreciate you very much in the work that you do, and Tom says he's always there. He's always working as best he can to help our veterans, and we appreciate very much your service. I would move that we receive and file that presentation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Brooks?
Thank you, Your Honor. It has been said, I believe, by William Shakespeare, that music hath powers to soothe the savage breast. We're going to test that hypothesis today. Before we get into the battles that are embedded in today's agenda, we take time out to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Fort Worth Opera with this resolution. Whereas in 1946, 3 visionary women, Eloise MacDonald Snyder, Betty Berry Spain, and Jean Axtell Walker, filed for a state corporation charter under the name Fort Worth Civic Opera Association. And whereas the Fort Worth Opera has become a nationally recognized regional opera company and is now the oldest continually performing opera company in the state of Texas and among the oldest in the United States. And whereas the Fort Worth Opera selected the Fort Worth Symphony Orchestra as the company's permanent orchestra, and in 1998 moved its productions to the newly completed Bass Performance Hall. And whereas in 2007, the Fort Worth Opera became the first major American company to transition from a fall-spring season to a festival format, and in 2013 launched the Frontier Works Initiative, allowing composers and librettists to see their works performed by young professional singers. And whereas the Board of Trustees proudly chose Afton Battle in 2020 to become the company's 8th general director, and in 2021 was appointed to the board of Opera America. Under her guidance, the company has launched FWO Go, an artistic initiative featuring pop-up performances in neighborhoods across the DFW Metroplex and numerous other programs. And let me just interject here that Fort Worth Opera Go program put its opera company on the bed of a flatbed truck, and during the 2020 early voting election cycle, when we had long lines at every voting place, they brought their opera company out and entertained people waiting in line to vote. Now, therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby recognize and congratulate the Fort Worth Opera upon the celebration of their landmark 75th anniversary, as it continues to explore innovative ways to connect with audiences and build dynamic relationships through technology to offer a blend of entertainment and interactive content for opera lovers. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this 9th day of November 2021. And I move approval of this resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Here to receive this resolution this morning are Afton Battle, the General Director of the Fort Worth Opera, Sharon Goodspeed Keaton, Director of Children's Opera Theater, and Tyranika Washington, Senior Manager of Artistic and Production Administration. And also present this morning are members of a new national chapter of the Society Supporting the Arts. And they're in attendance today and are one of the sponsors of the Fort Worth Opera. Afton and company, please meet me at the podium. Please introduce the performance
Thank
for
you.
today.
Well, thank you so much. I apologize for having my back this way, but I will do some of this because I am a performer as well. First of all, thank you so much, Commissioner Brooks, for your unwavering support of Fort Worth Opera. Thank you, the rest of Commissioners Court, for allowing us to be here today. I agree, music transcends everything. If we've learned anything during this pandemic, it is that we are more appreciative, hopefully, of the performing arts now more than ever. Fort Worth Opera is a historic gem. It is and should be every Fort Worthian's pride and joy. Being from Texas and a performer myself, I am literally living my wildest dream. I never thought that I would be running an opera that I'd be running an opera company, and especially in the state that I grew up in. So thank you so much for your support. I hope to see you all at our Fort Worth Opera performances coming up this year. You can find us online, www.fwopera.org. We have a great 75th anniversary season for you all. Also, thank you to the wonderful women of the Pearls Association for your, there they are, for your support of Fort Worth Opera. Thank you for believing in what we do and what we bring to the people of Fort Worth. And to test the hypothesis that music does transcend all, it is my honor to introduce you to Brandon Bell, who is a Fort Worth Opera Leslie resident artist. He is with us for his first year. He will be accompanied by Dr. Charlene Lotz, who is our head of music, and they are beautifully managed and directed by Sharon Goodspeed Keaton, who is our director of Children's Opera Theater Production and Civic Impact. Thank you all so much for your support, and I definitely look forward to seeing you at a Fort Worth Opera event. Thank you.
Although the acoustics are good in here, you might hand Brandon the mic.
Absolutely. I think I'm okay without the mic. This is
like it.
space right here. I bet he's okay without a mic.
Yeah, okay, go for it.
Thank you. Bella siccome un angelo in terra pellegrino, fresca siccome il giglio che s'apre sul mattino, occhio che parla in rime, sguardo che tolgo fiamma che vince le mano, sorriso incantator. Innocente ingenua che se medesima ignora, modestia impareggiabile, bontà e divina mora, ai miseri pietosa, gentil, dolce il cielo fatta per far beato un cor, beato un cor. Il cielo fatta per far beato un cor, per far beato un cor. Il cielo fatta nascere per far beato un cor.
Okay, so every Tuesday.
We'll just take a couple of minutes here and let them go ahead and
Thank you, Brad.
Thank
y'all
you. That was amazing.
very much for being here. We'll hear all day.
Thank you, Commissioner Brooks.
My pleasure.
Okay. Now we come to the Commissioners' Court announcements.
I would like to ask that we adjourn today's court meeting in honor and memory of Daphne Brookins, Fort Worth ISD trustee for District 4, who passed away suddenly this past week. Daphne was passionate about the needs of children, and before being elected to the Fort Worth ISD Board of Trustees, she served on the City Council of the City of Forest Hill and served as its mayor pro tem. Our prayers go out to Daphne's sons and the rest of her family.
I just wanted to provide a thanks to our partners that helped us on our second in as many weeks drive-through COVID-19 vaccine clinic that we had this past Saturday. Especially want to thank Vinny and his team for quickly scaling up in preparation for the availability of the vaccines for children. So just a quick thanks. That's all I have.
If you haven't heard by now, our district attorney, Sharon Wilson, made an announcement this morning that she would not be seeking re-election. This isn't a goodbye to her now. We will say, and we'll have many opportunities to say goodbye to her, but I did feel like that I especially needed to thank her. She has done so much for Tarrant County in her time in Tarrant County, remembering that she started in the DA's office. She then served as judge for many years and then came back and was elected the first woman to serve as the criminal district attorney in Tarrant County, and has done, in my opinion, a fantastic job. She developed the discovery compliance protocols. She created special units when there was special needs and the need to focus on things. She didn't just let it continue to go on. She developed units: intimate partner violence unit, domestic violence, the special rape unit that was created this past year, crimes against elders, white collar crimes. She, along with Commissioner Brooks and others, were critical in pushing for the mental health diversion center, which will open up by the end of this year. And I can't tell you, the last 19 months or however long since March the 13th, for us it was March the 11th or 12th, because we worked many hours with you and with Leslie and others to craft the COVID things. And the thing that I will say is Sharon and I have not always agreed on everything, but we were never disagreeable in the way we approach things. And we've lost that a lot. And Sharon is always willing, she's always going to state her opinion, as everybody should. But when it comes to actually sitting down and formulating, she also has an open mind about that. I'm not going to miss her, because she and I are leaving at the same time. But I'm going to look forward to working with her for the next 14 months, because there's still a lot of work to do. And Sharon, I again can't tell you how much you have meant to me over the whole 25 years that I've been with the county so far, and I know you'll be just as helpful in the next 14 months. Is there anything you would like to say at this point in time? Well, let's just thank Sharon. I'm going to thank Sharon. And now let the fun begin. I can relate.
Let me just say, Judge, that for the past 17 years, I have been Sharon's county commissioner. And during that period of time, she's been my hanging judge. She's been my criminal district attorney. She's been a reliable partner when it comes to serving the mental health needs of the people of Tarrant County. And for those things, I thank you, Sharon. Sharon and I don't share the same political pigmentation, but we've never let that bother us. it's always been about what's best for the people of Tarrant County. And I thank you for many years of collaboration, Sharon. And this jail diversion center, we'd probably still be trying to push that rock up the hill if it were not for Sharon joining with us and putting her shoulder to the rock and helping us push. Thank you, Sharon.
If there are there any other announcements? Then you have before you the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second?
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, we can now go to the briefing item and ask Mr. Snave to come forward and make his presentation.
Where are you? Right.
I was looking for you earlier, Vinny.
Good morning. I'm okay. Thank you for having me again. So we're gonna. Some days you never know. I was standing out there and I heard my name and I was like, "Am I up?"
We're gonna look forward to the day when we don't have to have you.
Not every week, at least, right?
Right.
Yeah, you could use a break.
All right. So we're gonna go over our emerging and current health issues update, mostly focused on COVID. But good news, things are starting to look very green all across the Metroplex. Yes. Yes, these are hospitalizations. They're certainly in a downtrend, very good news for all of us. Our cases are declining as well. I think we added another 200 something this morning. 365,000 and some change, I think 365,700 are the total number of cases in the county that have occurred so far with the pandemic. And then 4,784 deaths. And death data is declining as well. I'll show you that on the chart. Hospitalizations certainly on a very good rate of decline. We're at 221 confirmed cases in the hospital. That's about 5.2% of our hospital capacity in Tarrant County. Pediatric hospitalizations are down. We're at about 4. I think on Monday we had 1, but that could be just a reporting thing because on the weekend, sometimes not all hospitals report. But the number's 4, which is quite a decline from the 48 we had just 2 months ago. So that's great news. And the trauma service area E, which is represented on the map, is at 799 cases confirmed. That's, again, 5.06% of the hospital capacity. There is a little bit of just a bump, probably post-Halloween, who knows. But we were at 4.9 something percentage for a couple of weeks, and we've just gone back up to 5.06. So people like me, we get kind of all like, let's look at what's happening in the data. But overall, we're in a downward decline, and that's the main trend to look at. Here's the Tarrant County information on the left-hand side. There's the case charts, if you will, the epidemic curve on how the outbreak is progressing. And you can see a very clear, steep decline happening in Tarrant County. And on the right-hand side is the death data represented by date of death. So it's certainly in a decline as well. We're at a high level of community spread, but I have a few things to share with you today. But let me show you the chart first. So all of the indicators that we look at are in sync. Everything's going down. The positivity rate on this chart is about 11.12%, I think, 11 point something. And the 10% mark is the cutoff. That's one indicator that determines, and it's independent. And then the other indicator is the case rate. It has to be below 100 per 100,000 people. So 100 cases per 100,000 or below is the other trigger. We've noticed that there's a sort of a change, a data change that we need on the positivity rate, and here's the reason why. On the left-hand side is our current chart of the positivity rate. On the right-hand side is a different data source, and it's showing that we are below the 10% mark. So we started investigating. Back when the pandemic started, we were looking for data sources for this information. Obvious data is the Texas NEDS surveillance system, but it was having, if you all recall, all kinds of glitches. One day it would report, then nothing would come for a while, and then a whole backlog of information would come. So we decided we were going to go with the CDC Essence platform, and for missing gaps, we were going to add local lab data that we received. And that worked fine. As you can see, throughout the pandemic, it worked great. Both lines kind of, were intertwined, and they were pretty much showing us the same information. Occasionally there'll be a 1 or 2% gap. So back on August 4th, we got a notification from Essence that they're dropping 3 or 4 labs that report to them. But they also told us that those labs report less than 5% of the data nationally. So it didn't seem like a big deal. So we decided not to change our current setup, leave it the way it is. But what we've noticed is that there is now a gap developing in the reported data. So it's becoming obvious that NEDS is getting a lot of Texas data, and it has stabilized. Y'all saw during the legislative session, they added a bunch of money. DSH has got a lot of grants, so they upgraded NEDS. So it's become a lot more stable. We get consistent reports every day. Occasionally you'll see a note from me, there's a backlog from a lab, but it's not necessarily a NEDS issue, it's a lab issue. So we've noticed that there's a gap developing, even though the trend is exactly the same. Seems like the denominator data that we're getting is less compared to what NEDS has. So what we're going to do today is actually switch the data source to NEDS, but we'll go back to the notification date of August 4th. So the right-hand chart would be the redrawn line to show the positivity rate, and there'll be a red dot there on the date of the change showing that that line has been redrawn from there. There'll be a note explaining why that has happened. But what that does, it's kind of an interesting time. On its own, it wouldn't do anything. But combined with that, we've had our case rate come down yesterday below 100 per 100,000. We typically take a 2-day breather just to make sure data is staying consistent. Tomorrow, if everything holds, we are likely going to change from high level of community spread to a substantial level of community spread. And there's some explanations below. These are CDC definitions. Early on in the pandemic, I know having discussions with our county judge about all these levels and what actions to take, it wasn't very clearly defined. But over the course of the pandemic, they have clearly defined what these levels mean and when they trigger and so forth. So we will be at substantial spread, which coming down is a great thing, right? But otherwise, if you just look at it on its own, it's still substantial level of spread in our community. There's a lot of disease activity, but we're passing it on the way down, so that's great news. So that's kind of the big change, and I wanted to kind of make sure I give you guys a minute to ask any questions you may have.
I've got a comment.
Yes, sir.
All of that data is positive, and we're grateful for it. It shows that the level of spread is coming down, the number of new infections is coming down, the number of deaths is coming down. What it does not indicate to me is that the level of immunity in our community has increased. Rather, what I think we're seeing is that the Delta variant is tailing off in our community and across the country. Now, that's a great thing, but that does not guarantee that another variant will not come along and replace the Delta variant. So we should not get comfortable with the fact that the numbers now look good. Our immunization rate is still low.
Yes, sir.
And needs to increase in order to effectively get us out of the COVID era. Would you comment on that?
Commissioner, I was going to say you're hired to do public health because I could not have explained it any better. You're absolutely right. Again, those who watch what's happening, we're a global community, right? So those who watch what's happening in Europe, they're getting hit with their Delta surge right now. UK's had some issues, but they were kind of an outlier. They kind of had an early bump, and now they're kind of, again, having a surge. Ukraine, Russia, central part of Europe, everything's kind of on a rise because of the Delta surge. Now, have we seen other variants? Yes, there's a Delta Plus, there's Mu variant, there's many others. So far in our country, Delta is the majority. Almost 98% of the cases or more are Delta variant. And what we're seeing is as Delta is declining and moving into sort of the western and northwestern part of the country, there's heavier caseloads in those states. Our parts of the country are declining. And then the other thing I was going to tell you, you made a comment about vaccine information. That's why it's so important for everybody to work together and take the vaccine in a timely fashion, because if we have a slow uptake, people are protected with the vaccine, but those that are not, when they get infected, virus replicates and it mutates. That's just normal part of the process. And that mutated virus may impact folks that are vaccinated, because the vaccine works well against certain strains. If it deviates too far out, we see this with the flu every year. You got the best vaccine and then the virus mutates and then it doesn't work. That's the risk. That's why everybody should work together as a community to fight these large-scale community problems. Yes, there's individual responsibility, but there's also community responsibility. And that's a tough one. But when the times like these, I think community responsibility needs to be up front and center. So that's the update on the information about case trends. Everything's on a decline. Always a caution in the air about what's happening overseas, because that could come back. We're heading into cooler season. Let's see what happens. I mean, you talked about people that are protected. There's vaccinated folks in the community. There's folks who had sort of natural immunity because they just recovered from having COVID. But there's still, when you add all the numbers up, there's still a good part of the community that has technically no protection, right? So if there's another variant or another surge, that can still come back and cause some issues.
So, Vinny, before you move on from this section, will you talk a little bit about pediatric hospitalizations and what that looks like right now?
Yes, so they're down, and currently in Tarrant County hospitals there are 4 reported confirmed cases, and that at the peak about 2 months ago was about 48, so that's a significant decline.
You mentioned that earlier. I missed that. Okay, thank you.
All right, and then, so what should the public continue to do? Well, first of all, get vaccinated. There's no doubt about it. It works. I did not have enough time to put everything on the slides, but there's a report that DSHS released yesterday. First time ever in the pandemic they've been able to study and document for the entire state of Texas vaccine efficacy. And I'm kind of paraphrasing, not exactly quoting, but the bottom line is, in the recent surge, people who were hospitalized and or who died, 97 to 98% were unvaccinated. So what does that tell you? People who were vaccinated still got caught up occasionally, but they made only 2 to 3% of the hospital load. And you all saw how heavy it got in the metro areas. That was mostly just unvaccinated people all across the state of Texas. So if that's not clear evidence that vaccine works, I don't know what else proves it. Yes, sir.
What are you seeing with the vaccines right now that are out there? And I asked this question again, I think last week, but pharmacies are the recipient of most of those vaccines. In clinics, the percentage that are coming to what we had as the mega, the public health, Arlington, THR, those folks, they're not getting as many of these vaccines this round for the kids. Do you have any ideas yet from the pharmacies as to how many vaccines they're giving out?
Not currently, but the data file that comes in tonight for us, and we'll update on the dashboard, we expect to see some details there. Our clinics have had just a little bit of demand on kids' vaccines up to 11, but it's because this entire network of providers has been leveraged. A lot of pharmacies have it, pediatricians' offices have it, so it's a very distributed effort. Now, looking at the 12 to 15-year-old age group and how it all rolled out, parents were hesitant in the beginning to get their kids vaccinated, but as school opened and cases happened, I think that hesitancy went away. Numbers have improved significantly. And I think we're sort of seeing that slow start in general with the younger age group, but I think it's going to pick up around the holidays as people kind of let this simmer in, and that it's important to get vaccinated.
And then you've got a clinic set up, I think, with Arlington?
Yes, sir. We're actually in preparation. There's a one-day mass vaccination clinic that we're doing at the Dan Dipert Career and Technical Center on Pioneer Parkway on this Saturday, November 13th, in conjunction with Arlington ISD. But it's open to everybody. I mean, anybody can come. Other school districts can send their kids and parents if they would like. We're partnering with Arlington ISD because there was a lot of demand in that area. People wanted that kind of a service. They did one day with the Arlington Fire Department when the 12 to 15 vaccine got released, so they wanted to replicate that effort. So we're giving it a shot and see how that works. And then if the model works for us and for the school districts, we'll try to replicate it in other places. But so far, all of these locations are open. I mean, if you look at our calendar, it stays full. At any given day, there's usually 15 to 20 public locations between us and our partners. And then there are these pharmacies and doctors' offices. So there's not a lack of locations or availability of vaccine. It's just that we're hitting those folks, that are probably on the fence for quite a while about getting vaccinated or not. And we need to kind of continue to work on that messaging. So there's a couple of pieces of good news on the horizon that I'm keeping a very close watch on, because that will change the way we handle the pandemic, and it will really complete our arsenal of tools, so to speak, to deal with this virus. Oral antivirals are on the cusp. The company Merck had a big trial in New Mexico for a medication called Molnupiravir, and they had very promising data. Our FDA, I believe, is going to review that at the end of the month for an oral antiviral. It got approval in UK just last week, so we're expecting that we will get the same here. But then there's two others on the horizon. I think Pfizer just announced a mid-clinical trial data, very positive for one of their pills. And there's another smaller pharmaceutical, the name escapes me, starts with a T. They've announced something similar, that an oral antiviral may be forthcoming as soon as early as next year. But we're really hopeful the Merck one comes out at the end of the month, because if you just think about the whole gamut of what happens, somebody gets sick, they get told by public health, you got to stay home for 14 days till you recover, or if you're really sick, go get antibody treatment or get to the hospital and they'll give you IV antivirals. There's not an in-between. Either you stay home or you get admitted to the hospital. With the flu, we can all take a Tamiflu 3 to 5 days later, we're good. That was what was missing on how to manage this pandemic, and this is going to be a game changer, I believe, on the tools that are available to deal with the pandemic. So we'll just keep an eye out on it, and hopefully that will be positive news going into the holidays. Quick update on vaccines. Overall numbers, again, frustrating part is this data from last Wednesday. Some of y'all have seen it on several meetings, but we've got 2.7 million doses administered across the county, 1.07 million people fully vaccinated. That's about 50% of the overall and 62% of the 12 and older eligible population. But starting tomorrow, I expect that number to drop because we're going to add the 5 and older as the eligible population. That adds a bigger denominator of 204,000 people, but it will catch up eventually. And then all the other age percentages are improving, but as we add the new age group, we're going to realign these age categories. So I believe there's going to be a 5 to 11, a 12 to 18, 18 to 65, and then 65 and older, just to align with how the vaccine is now available. So it will clean that up a little bit more, and the numbers will look a little different.
So we'll see all those changes tomorrow?
Yes, ma'am. Tomorrow's update is supposed to have those. The positivity rate one will push this afternoon because, again, that data is obvious to us and we didn't want to wait anymore. The vaccination updates on the booster doses, these are all the third dose and booster dose combined. There's about 108,000 that were given so far across the county. So again, that leverage network of pharmacies is working. And we're still waiting on some feedback from DSHS about nursing homes and long-term care facilities. What I've been told is that they have different teams available and some vendors that are going to be doing that work. But I haven't seen any activation of a particular team that may have come to the area. But it's a large state. I'm sure they're doing that work as well. So again, a reminder, a one-day mass vaccination event on Saturday, November 13th at the Dan Dipert Career and Technical Center, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., open to all, not just the Arlington ISD participants. But again, the focus remains 5 to 11, but we'll have booster doses, we'll have adult doses, we'll have everything available. So everybody should come. This time around, I don't think they're arranging for the buses, because last time that was uptake was not as good. But it's an easily accessible location, so people should be able to get there.
And so, Vinny, is this drive-through, or people park and go in?
This one is an indoor event, yes, ma'am. There's been drive-through events. I think your office had arranged
On
one
Saturday,
at the
yeah.
Bowie High School, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Well, and when I was out there, I found that some people would park their cars and then walk up to the tent, and then
Yes.
we had to instruct them to get back in their cars. But just to make the distinction as we're spreading the news about it, is that it is.
This is an indoors event,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, otherwise it will, I think they could do it there at that location, but that could get tight. I mean, the building's
Very quickly you
pretty.
could. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank
Building's
you.
real nice, though. Testing updates, as expected, testing demand and the volume is down. So we're starting to make some changes. So we had our mobile unit out there at the Northwest Subcourthouse. So we've closed that mobile testing operation, but that's just sort of semantics, right? We moved the operation indoor to our Northwest Subcourthouse clinic. The only change is there's a sign at the door with a phone number, so when somebody comes up and needs testing, they're supposed to call that number, and staff will come out to your car, help you do the testing. And they're trying the self-testing model, where they'll bring you the kit, they'll give you the instructions, you do the nasal swab, you stick it in the tube, give it back. But if somebody can't do it, of course, staff can help. But the idea is it makes it more easy to manage, and we can do it without having to have a specific team out there just for testing. So if that model works, we'll replicate it at all our clinics, and it will be a service that we'll have available for a little while. If the surge happens again, we might have to shift the model, because then you need a dedicated team of people. When things were busy, y'all remember, I know at Northwest or at the Northeast Subcourthouse, one day there were like 250 people lined up in like 2 hours. That was a lot to manage. So, we'll keep an eye out on how it all works and do the best. Vendor sites, we're going to start scaling down. Currently, there's 5 sites open. We're going to start looking at possibly shutting down 1 site every week over the next couple of weeks, and we'll watch the data. If the demand is there, we'll keep them open longer. If the demand really is declining the way it is, we'll scale those down and sort of internalize the operation to public health clinics. That way we're not engaging a vendor just for that service.
Will you, I noticed it wasn't in this packet, but will you send what the weekly numbers are?
Yes, ma'am. Last night I couldn't pull it all together, and yes, I will.
Okay, thanks.
The updated schedule will be on our website at tarrantcounty.com/COVID testing. There's a testing finder map tool as well, so people can put in their zip code, and it will bring up locations near them that are run by us. And there's a similar map tool available from DSHS that brings us more locations that are sometimes private, or like private clinics or urgent cares and so forth. So there's a lot of options for testing as well. All right, that's all I have. Happy to answer any other questions.
Any other
Thank you,
questions?
Vinny.
All right.
Thanks, Vinny.
Thank you.
So, members of the court, we're now going to go to the administrator section. First, we're going to go to item number 2. We're actually going to combine item 1 and 2. So we're asking Mr. Shatner to come forward and make that presentation.
Good morning, Judge, Commissioners.
Good morning, Will.
Good morning.
So, in an attempt to make sure that court has all the necessary information, as well as watch the program developments for the various focus areas that court has outlined regarding the state and local fiscal recovery funds from the ARPA for the American Recovery Plan Act, we have the administrator staff working with audit, budget, and a number of other departments has outlined for you all a kind of a process, if you will, going forward. You all will have an ongoing agenda item that'll be under the administrator section, which you all see the first one. It asks for requests 2 action items. The first is looking at the actual budget, and you all were sent this budget yesterday afternoon, but it is an 11 by 17 document that shows Focus Area 1, Focus Area 2, 3, and 4, the programs that you all have authorized, as well as the programs that have been recommended by the work group. And these programs, in particular, are outlined in your court communication. And we have agendized these items so the Commissioners Court is able to accept those as move them over from recommended to being program budgeted, to be able to move forward with those in the coming weeks. The goal that staff has outlined after hearing feedback from Commissioners Court is that moving forward, Commissioners Court does not want to see an item that is newly added to the program budget sheet be on the same Commissioners Court agenda. So there would be a little bit of time for development questions and to talk through those various issues.
So it could show up one week, and then we would be prepared to maybe take action the next week, and in between we could ask any questions, or you could make any presentations that you'd like to make.
However court would like us to be able to move forward with it.
So this is what we're talking about.
I find this very helpful.
I do like this.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah,
Good.
I find it very helpful.
What it says to me is, at the top it says what we've allocated thus far, and then it shows what requests have been made and whether we have approved those, and then whether they've been encumbered, whether it's been actually spent, or whether it's still out there so that in case we were to change our minds, we could. But then the blue represents the new recommendations that, and the one thing, I mean, I would like for the blue to say, okay, here's the brand new, here's the first time you've seen these things. And then maybe after we've seen them one thing, then the next week they change to a different color that says, okay, if we haven't, I love colors.
Judge, we'll work on how to display that.
But this is very helpful from my perspective.
And then we do have a roll-up document as well, which is the small one-pager, which shows for courts information how the funds are flowing across the focus areas, and then if court were to approve and go ahead and budget all the new program recommendations, what impact that would have on those particular focus areas. You'll also see in a salmon color a requested changes, and so staff is requesting removing $525,000 from the FRF program budget. Ms. Camarino and others have identified alternative funding for those positions through our ERA funding, and so we would like to have those removed. And then also in subsequent weeks, whenever there is an item on the agenda, you'll see it in yellow. And so we will have that as well called out for you all as we move forward.
So that's the color I was asking for, so that the item would actually be on the agenda for us to take an action on, but it would have already appeared there in blue before?
So the thought is that if it's in yellow, it will be an agendized item on the agenda. And as an example, we're prepared, staff has prepared for the CDA reduced court backlog. That's a position swap that the CDA has requested from a previously authorized civil position to a white-collar crime position in order to reduce the white-collar crime backlog. And it is a net neutral, so it has no impact on the budget, it's just a position change. So we would be willing, staff is prepared to bring that back next week to court as an agendized item under HR's agenda portion. So it would be yellow next week to just say that this is on the agenda, and then to bring it over from program budget, from where it is now in blue, from recommended to program budgeted. Court can do that two ways. You can either take action during this particular agenda item to move them over, or if staff receives direction from the court to move forward with these items, whenever it goes on the agenda and you all approve it, that will also shift it over from recommended to approved.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, this sheet says that today we're not voting on anything because there's nothing on the program agenda. But next week, the requested changes, we could actually probably take action on but in the normal course of our business then, the requested changes and the new programs, those amounts that you've outlined there will appear in yellow next week.
If they are on the agenda. So the court...
Right. Okay, I see what you're saying.
If they're on,
Unless we say pull it off or don't put it on there, in all likelihood, it may appear on the agenda.
Now, some of these items do have some lead time. And as an example, there's two good examples for this. One is the MHMR's Assisted Outpatient Treatment Program, the AOT program. We need to begin, if court wants to move forward with that program, we need direction to begin contract negotiations with MHMR to develop that, to bring it back to court. And we could receive that direction we would prefer a court order from moving it from recommended to program budget.
Are you seeking that action today, these type of things?
If it's the will of the court, we're more than happy to move forward.
Let me tell you why we'd like something like that. What we're asking for is consent of the court to move it to a potential funded item.
I can't hear you very well, GK.
So what we're asking for, there are some major programs out there that are going to take a short period of time to do contracts, okay? So what we'd be asking for, like the UT Southwestern piece, this is cancer screening. We still need to work out the contracts with the UT Southwestern, but we would like to get an official notice from the court that to move the $9 million over, that's the max of the program. The contract may be less than that, but until we get that, we really shouldn't be working on a contract and go through all of those processes without knowing that it's okay with the funding. The second one is the MHMR program, which I believe everybody is 100%, 150% wanting to do this. This is something that we had a program in the past, very effective. It was a grant program. We ran out of the grants, and it's something that MHMR has provided in the past. And then the third one, which is something that the electronic monitoring on home confinement. This is something that we would use, this money we would use to enhance a contract that we currently have through CSCD. We've been working with the Sheriff's Department for those individuals who may still be in jail on a misdemeanor charge, not all of them, but some of them, and they've been convicted, that rather than serving that time in the county jail, the judges would have the option to put that sentence as a home release, but that would be something that would be electronically monitored. So those are the type of programs that we would need to get direction from the court so that we can move forward with them. There's some that we're not saying that we're going to approve any of that. We just need a direction from the court, an official direction from the court, so that we can start working on those contracts and bringing them back to you.
Sure.
I move that the court give the administrator's office direction on those three programs to move forward to the contracting stage. Those three programs are the Moncrief Cancer Screening Program, the Electronic Monitoring Home Confinement Program, and the MHMR Assisted Outpatient Treatment Program.
Well, I'll second, but then discussion.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
So then, but you still need direction from us on the Workforce Solutions one, right? Or, okay.
Yes, ma'am, that one would still be outstanding.
Okay, so can we add that to your motion?
Fine.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So then I'll second that.
Any discussion? So on the workforce solutions, talk to me a little bit about that one.
So the Workforce Solutions, this was a proposal that Workforce Solutions of Tarrant County approached us with. It would, we would be funding the purchase of 700 laptop computers and the associated costs associated with that in order to make those computers available through an existing loaner program to job seekers and individuals looking to receive training through Workforce Solutions to increase their skill sets to get better jobs or to be reemployed through the pandemic. But it is the expansion of an existing program.
And on that existing program then, talk to me a little bit about, okay, so we loan them to them until they get a job and then they give them back and then we loan them to somebody else?
So as far as with that specific existing program, I'll have to go get some more information from Ms. McDonald to get into the details of it, of how they would do that. But that would be, the onus would be on Workforce Solutions to track and retain those particular computers. But again, the goal is to expand their existing program to have more folks be able to access their job enhancement programs.
I have no problem with us beginning to work through the program or the contract on that, but I would like, as we do that, for some additional information regarding how this program has worked in the past. And I just want to make sure how many computers do we have, and do we still have as many computers as we started off with?
So on this particular item, this is one where that the Workforce Solutions did not have the funding, and all the funding schema that they received, but they didn't have funding for these computers, and it was to provide training for potential individuals to go back to work. And so it's not as if we're going to give someone a computer. It's going to be utilized by Ms. McDonald and her teams, and she believed that this was the correct number. And so it was something that we could do under FRF, and at the same time enhance our workforce. That's the purpose of this.
So, but in our action today is just to authorize you all moving forward with the process. It's not actually.
It's not approval.
Right, it's not approval, so.
We'll have to eventually approve the contract, I think.
Right.
Yes, correct.
In those 4 instances.
As staff has been consistently, our position has been very consistent that we want to continue to bring the items back to court along normal process channels. So with these in particular, I'd imagine they'll come through the respective, likely in the administrator section, that we will develop these contracts, get questions that are answered, work those issues out, create evaluation metrics to do it, and then bring them back to you all.
Yeah, it'll be that item on the agenda that you all requested, that we tell you what's on the agenda that's going to be funded, or we're recommending a contract for FRF funding.
In terms of those laptops, I've got some experience dealing with giving out laptops. I know that there is a low jack type of device that can be installed in those laptops so that as soon as somebody powers it on, we know where it is. I'd like to see something like that installed in these laptops so we don't lose them.
Absolutely. And we'll work with Workforce Solutions on inventory control and those types of issues.
Any other discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And so on these other acts, you need some board action also.
So let's walk through the rest of these items. So you all have given us direction on those 4 significant, or the 4 contracts regarding FA 2 and 3. So in FA1, there are 4 positions. Well, 2 positions and 2 additional ones. So the first one is the CDA's position to reduce the court backlog. Again, that's something that staff is prepared to bring back next week under the HR section to do, as well as the DRO position. It's an intake caseworker. It was previously a CRF position that the work group has substantiated a long-term need for, and so we are recommending shift it over to FRF. And then the JP4 and JP6 have both requested additional staffing related to increase in eviction cases and filings. So the work group has recommended a non-FTE solution, whether that's a temporary employee or through using an outside temp agency. Budget's still working the details out with those particular offices. So we will be coming back to you all with those 4. And are you all okay with the court be willing to give us direction that you do want those 4 items to come back on a future agenda item as well?
Yes. Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Then we'll start setting those up on subsequent agendas,
And then what
which they will
about
be
the
in yellow.
elimination?
And then we do need action regarding the 4 items at the bottom in the salmon color in FA4 to remove those from the agenda, to remove those from the program budget. They will be funded through the ERA funds. Okay. They're not going away, but we found alternative fundings.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And then, Judge, the final item for this, in future courts or in future weeks, we will have a listing, action item B on this particular court communication. We'll have a listing of all the items on the agenda that we will ask you to receive and file. But at this time, there are no additional items.
Okay.
Thank you.
So in effect, I'm going to get an updated sheet and this on a weekly basis if there's action that we need to take.
Yes, sir.
Or if there's something new that has been approved by
Recommended or action items.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Sounds good to me.
So members of court, we're going to move to item 4 initially because that still deals with the FRF funds and the EAR funds. I'm going to ask Ms. Camareno to come forward to make that presentation. Will you also get a vote on item number 1?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Kristen.
Pull that mic down to you.
Yes, sir. GK has asked that I also get a vote on number 1, so let's do that first. Item 1 under the administrator's section. This is the weekly COVID-19 programs report.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the weekly report. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
I'm going to discuss very briefly a few things regarding rental assistance prior to requesting approval of updates to the policy as outlined in item 4 on the agenda. I've spoken with several of you about the fact that the state's emergency rental assistance portal did close on Friday at 5 p.m. It is our understanding that the amount of anticipated request exceeded the amount of funds available in that program, and so they decided to cut off that portal. They will continue to review applications and fund applications received by that date. However, it has already caused an increase in emails and phone calls from concerned residents who aren't sure where they fall in line from that program. And so we are diligently working to both ramp up our internal capacity to handle those requests and working with the auditor's office to come up with a few changes in process and procedure that will in the future allow some of those individuals to transition to our program. There are still details to be worked out as far as preventing duplication. So we'll be bringing that back to you in the next few weeks. But I do want to assure you that we are doing everything we can to prevent individuals from falling through the cracks and getting lost between the two programs. There's already been some media interest in this story, and I think that will continue, as it should. We will be issuing a press release depending on court action today on item 4 to be sure that our residents are aware that there are sufficient funds available in their local programs, both our program, the cities of Fort Worth, and Arlington. So if there are any general questions about the situation, I'm happy to answer those right now.
No question. I would just add, obviously, that I know we're tremendously disappointed that we got no notice from the state on this. I do want to thank you and your team for very quickly responding. I know y'all have been working on this nonstop to try to make sure that none of our residents and landlords are too negatively impacted.
Okay, if no questions, I will seek approval of the updates to the Tarrant County Emergency Rental Assistance Program policy as outlined in the court communication and as presented last week in court.
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, are you also doing 2? Did you do 2? Did anyone do 2?
We did.
Russell did 2.
Yes, sir. Russell did
Did we
too.
receive and file that?
There was action taken.
Okay, so there was actually action on that one.
Yes, sir.
That's all the spreadsheet
That's all the
stuff.
spreadsheet stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Members of the court, if we can now go to item number 3. As we discussed last week, now is the date that we need to cast our votes if the court decides to cast votes as it relates to the Tarrant Appraisal District Board of Directors election. Out of the 5,005 votes that have the potential of being cast by all the different taxing entities, Tarrant County has 515 votes. And we are properly agendized for you to take that action today.
We do have 2 audience participations who wish to speak to this item. Daniel Bennett. Good morning, sir.
Morning, sir. Morning, commissioners.
Morning.
Mayor Johnson, Commissioner Johnson, I'm sorry. My name's Daniel Bennett. I live in White Settlement in Mr. Johnson's district. I just want to briefly speak about the vote you're about to take. I have been going to these meetings since the fall of 2016. I probably missed 3 or 4, whether it be online or whether it be in person. The one thing that bothers me about this vote the most is that the taxing entities feel they have to be represented by a particular section of the county. For example, Arlington ISD. They have to put forth a nominee to think that they're being represented. Fort Worth does it, Fort Worth ISD does it, and Northeast Tarrant County does it. These directors represent Commissioner Brooks, Commissioner Allen, Judge Whitley, Commissioner Ficus, and Commissioner Johnson, and the other 72 taxing entities, regardless of where they come from. So area specific is not necessary. And every time we vote, this is the methodology. And I hope one day we can break that. That's my prayer. After attending these meetings, as I presented to the Azle ISD, Jim Lane, I'll just briefly state what I told their board here about a month ago. I've been attending TAD board meetings since 2016. My observation and opinion is that, as in the past and as in the present, these people have been elected to this board, whose professions are real estate brokers, agents, land developers, elected officials who are currently seated, or long-term former officials, are not a good fit for this board. That is my personal opinion. That's my personal observation. It's empirical, but it's mine. So that brings me to why I'm here today. I have gotten 2 candidates over the last 2 years who have been doing a really good job. And this is Mr. Diot and Mr. Gary Lasada. And these are not, they're private business owners, they're not politicians. One's an expert in property tax code, Mr. Lasada, and one is an engineer who brings critical thinking to the board. What we need is an IT specialist. We need somebody who can come in and be able to walk the walk and speak the speak of the software that the district currently has. Well, this morning I'd like you to consider Rocky Gilley. He is here today. He's a principal IT guy. He's an IT principal. I said it backwards, sorry. He's retired. He has plenty of time for the board and plenty of time to come and speak to you. I would ask that you would partially give some of your votes to him or consider giving all your votes to him. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next is Rocky Gilly.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Rocky D. Gilly. I live in Kennedale, Texas, lifelong resident of Tarrant County. Recently retired from a little over 40 years in the IT industry. So why am I here? I'm here to ask for your consideration of some of the votes that you're allotted to serve on the Tarrant County Appraisal District Board of Directors. Why? First, I'm a citizen now. I no longer hold any elective office. I'm not beholden to any special interest. This board of directors is a non-political board that should efficiently and even-handedly direct and oversee the appraisal rolls to make sure that we have an accurate and efficient certified appraisal roll. So in my 40-odd years of IT experience, I've evaluated software, been responsible for cyber recovery, cyber security, which is vital in today's world. And I can assure you that I will represent every business owner, every citizen, every residential property owner, every business property owner, every business personal property owner, and mineral owners in Tarrant County. And I will also assure you that I will earn my $1 a meeting fee. And if you have any questions, please ask away.
Questions? Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Gilly.
you.
That's all the audience participation I have at this time.
Move that we issue our 515 votes to Ms. Catherine Wildman.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'm going to vote against that motion because I feel that for the sake of diversity, we should cast half our votes for a diverse candidate, and that would be Mr. Jim Austin.
I'd also, this is more probably a question for GK in terms of process with the concerns that Mr. Bennett and Gilly raised. At this point, we're not even able to add nominations, right? Like we did that before?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. Very good.
Any other discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
So, members of the court, we can now move to item number 5.
Before we do, could we take just at least a 5-minute break?
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, if we can now go to item number 5 under the administrator's section. This concerns a discussion and possible action as relates to the redistricting of the justices of the peace and constable precincts in Tarrant County. While we've already completed the redistricting for the Commissioner's Court, this item was added to the agenda Friday afternoon, and there we have received a map and a revised map. Also, we have provided that map to you just during the break up on the dais, and we'll also be showing that on the screen. I believe that the map and the redrawn map is something that Judge Charbonneau has provided to us. I'm going to ask him to come forward and to talk a little bit about that. Your Honor, we do have a number of audience participation items on that. Speaking with Judge Charbonneau prior to this, there may be other JPs that have not filled out an audience participation form.
And what I had previously said, in the way we've always pretty well conduct ourselves, elected officials, especially as it pertains to their deal, they don't, in my opinion, don't need to fill out an audience participation. They can speak to that matter, and we'll welcome anybody who wants to speak to that. Now, but for those folks who are not, then if you're not an elected constable, JP, then and you wish to speak to it, then please have filled out one of the audience participation forms, so that, or that should have been filled out before 10, but we'll work with folks on that too. So.
And then one final comment, Your Honor. We do have Mr. Bob Heath, who is our general counsel on this particular item. He is with us today and is standing by to answer any questions the court may have.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll ask Judge Charbonneau to come forward and begin his presentation.
Welcome, sir.
Good morning.
Morning.
Judge.
Morning.
And no, my name hasn't changed. It's Charbonnet.
You know, he's my JP, and says Charbonnet.
True.
I'm not going to say anything else.
His dad, still CPA.
He is. He is.
We worked together for many years.
Good morning, Commissioners and Judge. First, let me start by saying I'm not going to sing. You should all be happy about this. And the map that you're about to see up here on the screen is a rendering of a new map for the JP Constable districts. This map, as you can see, has all the incumbents and their courthouses in their precincts.
Good start.
Good start. That being said, I bet you're asking why now. We're at census time, and that usually means redistricting. The JP constables are no different. This will allow the citizens to vote for their preferred representative in the next election. This map is based on the knowledge of the elected judge and their staff from various precincts, the current county database does not allow us to extract caseload data by voting precinct. This is why we have to rely on the judges and their staff. The formula that was used was very simple, or fairly simple. The judges were asked to identify high-density caseload precincts and provide their precinct numbers. Those voting precincts were looked at and were distributed to precincts that had a lower volume of cases. This will allow the workflow to be balanced among the 8 Justice of the Peace precincts as much as possible. Why do we need to change the precincts? The data that was found in the Office of Court Administration website, the database that all courts have to enter their information into every month, found that Precinct 5 and Precinct 8 were well below the precincts in the amount of cases that are processed through their courts. The data that was provided by the judges and their staff showed that high-density precincts in 6, 4, 1, 3, and 2 could be transferred to 5 and 8 to increase the caseload. Now, Precinct 2, Mary Tom Crenut will make a statement in a minute about how these changes to her precinct will impact the young children that come through her court on a daily basis. I want to provide just a little bit of why we're redistricting. Is the 2010 population of Tarrant County was 1.8 million, a little over 1.8 million. In 2020, it sits over 2.1 million. That's 16.7% growth in the last decade. Tarrant County is now the 3rd most populous county in Texas. With the population growth, our current JP precincts have become unequitable in population and case workload. So I would like to call on, first of all, let me go over the guidelines that we use for proposing the new maps. Keep each incumbent JP and constable in their current precinct. Keep current JP court in current precinct. Make minor adjustments to address the population for caseload. Take into account the areas of the county that will experience the most population growth over the next decade. And maintain the minority opportunities in the precinct. And so I will ask Judge Mary Tom Crenut to come up, and she's going to tell you a little bit about her precinct and why we moved a little bit out of hers.
And Judge Charbonnet, yes, in the meantime, may I have a copy of those guidelines that you all used? Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, Judge, but Devin's not the only one that needs a copy.
Oh, I
of
think
it.
we're going to
We're going to copies for you.
All right.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Hi, Judge.
Okay. Hi. All right. Good morning, or almost afternoon. We're close, aren't we? Judge, commissioners, thanks for allowing me an opportunity just to speak to a couple of points that we've heard here. I echo first and foremost Judge Charbonnet's comments as to the necessity to redistrict. If the goal of redistricting is truly to equalize and balance county resources with county needs, then you've got to look at the data on case filings, period. I assume everybody has seen lots of spreadsheets, metrics, pie charts. I know I've compiled a bunch, and you've probably seen a lot of data that we've been distributing. I've been working on this since June, July. When you're analyzing numbers and types of case filings, in each of our 8 JP courts, you'll see a large imbalance of those workloads, and they're specifically related to population density. That's been the case for many years. I've been here for almost 9 years. Judge Davis was before me for 14 years. We have one of the highest volume courts in Tarrant County, if not the state of Texas, in JP Precinct 2. These projections that we're looking at are continuing to increase in the high-density populations. The census numbers show us that. So we are projecting to even be more busy with higher caseloads than we've ever been, even pre-pandemic, with what's coming up with the numbers and with increasing our jurisdictional limits as far as 10 to 20,000, along with the ramp up of everything that we're navigating through with evictions and moratoriums lifting and whatnot. So I'll give you just an example of what this data supports. In 1 mile worth of multifamily apartments, you have more case types that have higher touch points, more greater touch points than you would in a 1 mile radius of a single family home area. That tells you that the types of cases that come out of these high density population areas are definitely longer getting through the court cycle, and they take up a lot more court time. Evictions, small claims trials in court, truancy, which we were given the honor of being able to handle and work with our communities on getting kids their high school education when the municipality shifted it to the county. So the proposed changes that I've seen based on this statistical data, I'm in support of. I believe that these adjustments do directly correlate to the goal of better balancing county resources with county needs, and I support that. I know I mentioned truancy. You guys may be aware that over 3 years ago, the HEB school district was looking for a place to file their truancy cases. I was already very heavy with Arlington with what I was doing with truancy, but they visited. Judge Brandt was not there yet. They were not wanting to file where they were out in Precinct 2, and so they visited me, and even though it did increase my workload somewhat, truancy is something that I believe in. I'm passionate about that. They came to us and began filing hundreds of cases a year with us, and I don't believe there's any other judges that were doing many, if any, truancies the last couple of years, and especially through the pandemic, and we continued. HEB was a great partner. We have worked diligently, it's hard work, to make sure that these kids can get their high school diploma. We've developed partnerships in this northern part of my area of the county, which I want to pick up, to where I can continue to develop those with the school districts, the parents, the kids, the partners that we have that provide the source of the community service programs and the opportunities to help these kids get their education. So this map allows for that. That's just one piece of what we're asking here today, is that you consider the caseload type. We properly shift different types of caseloads, which is what this map reflects, so that we have the ability to service our communities and use our county resources in the best way possible. Thank you for your time, and again, I do support this map.
Any of the other JPs or?
Good morning, Judge Whitley, Commissioners. How are y'all doing today?
Great.
Morning. So in reference to this, I want to say that probably my precinct was the least that had the effect of it in reference to this map. I do have, am receiving two voting precincts from Judge Bill Brandt, which me and him has discussed in the past year about trading over to me because the way the map was drew, I believe 10 years ago, we split Haslett. We didn't see a need to have one side of the city go to one JP and the other side of the city go to the other JP. So that was one of the things that me and him discussed over a year ago in reference to moving those two precincts over. That is one of the adjustments here for my precinct. Me and Judge Charbonnet talked about this in reference to equalizing the workload over a month ago in reference to the redistricting part because we knew it was coming up. I had reached out to Judge DeLeon back in May and June multiple times in reference to the 4 precincts, voting precincts that I wanted to transfer over to him, which is the bottom, well, it's the south right corner. If you look, I can see voting precinct 4497, 4203, 4179, and 44, I think that's 56. Sorry, I'm reading off the map. We discussed it. We both talked about it. We wanted to wait until the census data had come out. That was his request, and which we got the census data out late, as you know. And then we were waiting to hear from what the process was going to be in redistricting. After we found out that there possibly wasn't going to be any of this time period, I reached out to him again. A couple of weeks ago, may have been a week ago, and discussed him about these 4 precincts again. He said to send him the data and that he would be willing to look at it. Once again, I have very few changes in my precincts. My precinct load is normally, I run about third or fourth in cases in reference to all the 8 precincts. Just depends on what type of month it is.
And
so I'm
what
basically
precinct are you, Judge?
Precinct 4, sir.
4.
Yes, Northwest Tarrant County. So roughly, basically, I'm the median. So this, though I have given away a little, taken in a couple, I'm basically the median that everybody's basing their caseload type off of. So because I basically, like I said, run basically third and fourth. I do support this map. I believe it gives the distribution of workload that needs to happen at this point. I'm willing to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
Your Honor, come forward, please.
Judge Brandt, JP3, the northeast part of the county. As it stands, it's the 5th or 6th most populous JP precinct in the state of Texas. We have the median high caseload. It's not like Judge Kernett, but it's somewhere between Judge Swearingen and Judge Gregory. But I'm only losing precinct. I really appreciate all the people in those precincts that I've served as a judge, and I'm not happy about losing anything because I just want to serve the public that I was hired to serve. But I think this map makes sense from an equity perspective, and I believe it's fair to all the judges and court staffs involved. And I hope you all will support it. Thank you.
Leon?
Good afternoon, Commissioners and Honorable Judge. First, let me just address a couple of things. One, with respect to the workload measures that my colleagues are bringing this forward. And I just want all of them to know, we have never had a group discussion talking about the actual workloads and what can be done to alleviate those and to balance out our courts. All of us are very reasonable people, and I really believe that redistricting is not the only tool to achieve those workload measures. As Tarrant County grows, one day we're going to have to look at the possibility of actually doing a place 1 or a place 2 in an actual precinct. Additionally, with the criminal docket increase that Judge Charbonnet and I share with the Chisholm Trail Tollway, we may get to the point where we have one JP court that just hears nothing but criminal cases. So there are a lot of avenues at work and at play where we can achieve these equitable workload measures. And as Judge Gregory correctly pointed out, that we did have a couple of conversations with respect to these precincts, but I asked him to share with me a map. And I only got the map, I believe it was yesterday, and if this is the revised version, I have not had an opportunity to review that. But what they indicate is that they have been talking, and what I'm really upset about is just the lack of the integrity in the process. They have not talked to any minority JP as far as who put this map together. Not one minority constable about what they thought about this map or what ought to go in or not to go in. And it's really disrespectful to us as leaders, especially the thousands that we represent in Precinct 5, 8, and 7, and others. And so what I feel like is that the communities of color have been disrespected. Additionally, not one public hearing, virtual or in person, about this proposed map. We all know redistricting is going on. They've had them in Austin. Fort Worth City Council is doing them right now, and I currently serve on the Fort Worth ISD Redistricting Task Force Board. And so there are multiple opportunities for people to weigh in about these districts, because after all, those are the folks we represent. Additionally, I want to complain about the timing of this all. We get a map to look at 24 hours before you have to vote on something. That is unacceptable for us to review it, to digest it, and see the actual impact. Now let's talk about the impact. We can't discuss the impact because there is no data associated with these maps. No population, there was no breakdown of ethnicity, Hispanic, African American, Anglo, Asian, none of that stuff. We're unable to make a determination as to whether or not any packing occurred, if there was communities that were cracked apart. We haven't had a chance to look at what communities of interest, all of which are associated with redistricting. But I will say this, based on just a quick look, it looks like you're trying to pack a lot of areas into Precinct 5. And I want this court to know that back in the 80s, when Mike Moncrief sat in your chair, Your Honor, that Precinct 5 was created essentially to give Hispanics a voice. And so I want to make sure that we don't lose that voice either in the JP office or in the consul's office. And our new consul is here, Consul Munoz. And so as I wrap this up, I also want you to know that as they look at balancing these workload measures, there's another aspect to this entire map, and that it eliminates announced challengers against incumbents. And that should be that should raise your eyebrows when they present a map like this, knowing that he eliminates challengers for at least two of the incumbents, which I think is just totally improper. So I'm appealing to your best interests, appealing to the process that you all believe in, the transparency, the integrity and ethics all of you have when considering this map. I oppose it. I ask you to reject it, and I ask you to close this session with respect to redistricting for JPs and constables. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Judge, and to the Commissioner's Court. Just like Sergio, I definitely oppose these maps. We just saw these maps on yesterday, and I want to just kind of give you a background of how. The last thing Sergio and Kenan and I heard that you guys had voted against any kind of redistricting. So I just want to share, I got a text message on Sunday at 6:09. It said, I wanted to let you know there's an action item on the agenda for Tuesday's CC. It is to look at our precincts and hopefully balance the workloads. One of the specific criteria is that there is no funny business like gerrymandering and taking people out of precincts. It's to protect the incumbent and balance the work only. I will be around tomorrow if anyone has any questions. Judge DeLeon responded by saying, well, are there any maps? Judge Charbonnet, who sent the text, said, we will have maps ready for you guys on tomorrow. And I said, well, we'd also like to see workload measures as well. So yesterday, about 12:09, we got the map now. Is this the same map that you sent us? Is that the same map that we saw on yesterday? Okay, good, because when I looked at the map, and I want you to take a close look at the map, if you look at the current map and if you look at the proposed map, some of my districts are not even in there. So I don't know how we can take a vote on a map that's not correct. But my district is precinct number 8, and my dividing line has always been 30. 30 is the dividing line. So if you look at this proposed map, they have given me 7 precincts. Now, how many precincts are how many constituents are in a precinct? So I'm just going to guess and say maybe 1,000. So they have given me 7 precincts going north with maybe 1,000 constituents, and one of the constituents who's actually running for office is in that precinct. So if this is approved, then she goes to precinct number 8. And if you look at the bottom of precinct 8, where Charbonnet and our dividing line was Crowley Road, it goes all the way to McCart and all the way down to Rosinger. Now, I took a look at these. I was up all night looking at these districts. These are all minority districts. All of these are minority districts. So you have packed and cracked these districts into precinct 8. And then I want to look at Sergio because I kind of looked at his, and his like right over to the left, I believe, of mine. And if you look at Sergio's district, on precinct 6, going south, they add an additional 8 precincts to my district. And look at that map closely because I want you to understand that if you look at the current map, if you look at the proposed map, all of my districts are not on there. So what are we going to do with those districts if we approve this? Now, they gave me 8 additions, so I got 15 new precincts. So we're talking 15,000 minority districts packed in precinct number 8. If you look at Sergio's district, they gave him 35 new districts. So I don't know how many that would be. And they also took the opponent that was running against Charbonnet, put that opponent out of 6 and put that opponent into number 5. This is unconstitutional. This map that was shown dilutes minorities across Tarrant County. Packing minorities into District 5 and District 8 limits the ability of voters of color to elect a candidate of their choice across the entire county. This is unconstitutional. And as a justice of the peace, I've been here for 10 years, and this is the first time, this is not our first time redistricting. We've always gotten together. This has never happened, but for some reason, we did not know about this until Sunday. I'm shocked that we are discussing changing the lines. And I know that I'm not at the bottom of the list because we're a very, very busy court. And let me add, Judge, that the only case that you have to file in your precinct are evictions. You can file any other case in any of the courts in Tarrant County, any of the JP courts in Tarrant County. But to be here requesting to change this map 4 days before filing opens, it's just unconstitutional. Now, our commissioners, I'm hoping that as our commissioners, when you had your redistricting, you gave the public 2 drawing sessions and 5 input sessions throughout the county. 2 drawing sessions and 5 input sessions throughout the county. But the JPs, we had a text message and a map. And no workload measures. If we got workload measures, we just got those measures on this morning. So this is a slap in the face of our constituents. So please take a look at those maps clearly before you take a vote on those. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to, any of the other JPs, constables wishing to speak at this time?
Good afternoon, Judge Willie. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Kenneth Sanders. I'm the Justice of the Peace in Precinct 7. The concern I have with the process we've been introduced to this morning, the lack of transparency, the fact that these maps was drawn without the input of the minority judges. My first time seeing the maps were yesterday. At no time did we come together to discuss the process of redistricting among the 8 JPs in Tarrant County. Now, we've had previous meetings where we met for lunch, but not once did we have a meeting to discuss redistricting. And for that, I'm opposed to the process that led to these new maps. It makes me question what was the true intent of redistricting. Hearing that a challenger was drawn out of the district in these new maps, it makes me question the intent. And so, for that, I'm opposed to them. I understand that every 10 years, when we go through the census, we have to reevaluate districts and precincts. But I'm concerned about the process that led us to these 2 maps. And for that, I stand in opposition. And I hope that the men and women on the dais before me will feel the same way, that did we have the spirit of fairness and equality in drawing these lines. Thank you.
Anyone else wish of the current constables and JPs? Anybody wish to speak?
Your Honor, and to the commissioners and to all that are present, I am Constable Robert J. McGinty, the Constable of Precinct 2 in Arlington, Texas. I am the first African-American constable in Precinct 2. I like to just say that I was not informed, had no input, no engagement, no involvement on any redistricting plans, nor was I asked for my opinions on any of the maps that were drawn. My first knowledge of these maps came on yesterday morning as I was preparing to go to work. Someone called me and said to be in Commissioner's Court on today. At that time, I got a blurry version of this map, and I have not seen this map until this morning. As a constable, I want to make it clear that I'm vehemently opposed to withdrawing the lines without any input, engagement, or involvement from Constable of Precinct 2. First, as far as concerned with Precinct 2, our current workload as Constable's Office is right where it should be. We don't need to disperse any of our cases or our constituents. The constituents voiced the selection of constable in this past election, and then secondly, to shift precincts around blindly doesn't improve workload or could actually have the opposite effect and create a greater imbalance between precincts. Also, before any change is official, we should take into consideration what we're doing to minorities. Have we had any data, or if this will dilute the voices of minorities? At first glance, looking at this map, I assume that would be right. When we redistrict, we should have an open and fair process. The community should have been given ample time to weigh in. JPs and constables maps should be handled with the same as we're redrawing the commissioners as well. And the public should have input session in each district. You should not move on a map on the 11th hour. Once again, I'm praying and I'm hoping that you'll take into consideration that in order for us to make a change that will be helpful to all of the constituents, that you would deny this current map as we see it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
My name is Sandra Lee. I'm constable in Precinct 7. As they said, I just
got a copy of the map yesterday also. And I can understand the issues with courts in Truancy. We should have been, as a county, created a truancy court a long time ago. We cannot use that as an excuse not to do our job. We get paid well. And so if we're going to say, you know, we don't want work here and we don't want work there, we shouldn't be in office. As a minority, as a woman, we should have a right to let our people vote. Like they said, we're moving a candidate out of 6 into 5 just because we know that she has a great chance of winning, and it's not right. We took a pledge when this meeting started. We either stand by what we said or we don't. You know, it's simple. You know, we have a right to pay taxes like everybody else, but when it comes down to making real changes in this county, we want to plot and we want to scheme, and it's just not right. You know, I've had a few conversations with Constable Johnson, and I think he's a great, honorable man. And I'm going to assume the same about Commissioner Johnson because he raised him. So I'm hoping that somebody up here do the right thing and make sure that these maps, they do not pass. It's just not the time. 4 days before you start filing just doesn't seem right to me. You have people who have cashed in their stocks to run for office, and now you're going to tell them they can't even run because of some maps and some lines. It's an injustice to us all. So if we're going to pass these maps, then let's wait until after the 2022 election. You know, if that's what you want to do, let's wait. But this is not the time to do it now. It's just not right, and it's just not fair. So thank y'all.
Good afternoon. My name is Pete Munoz. I'm the constable in Precinct 5. I just want to state my objection to the maps, to the map. I did not hear about the redistricting until yesterday. You know, I don't understand how, as elected officials, we run on platforms of transparency, accountability, and then, you know, we run on a platform of working together. But yet, when something like this comes up, we don't have any discussions together. I'm more than willing to work with one another to see what we can do to better serve our community. I'm on social media platforms with several elected officials. My phone number, my cell phone number, has been out in the public for last couple of years. So there's no reason why I could not be contacted in reference to assisting in this process. So I don't understand how we got to this point. And I don't understand how shifting that workload is going to ease things unless, are the resources going to go with the workload? Is personnel going to be moved from one precinct office to another, along with resources, office space, personnel, vehicles, computers? Are those things going to move along with the workload? I don't have any answers to those questions. So I oppose the map. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak with regards to that? We're going to get to the other public. We'll get to the other public, just audience participation in just a minute. Jason, there's been a lot of talk with regards to the timing and when everybody got the map. Would you speak a little bit, just explain the timing on that from a standpoint?
Sure. We wanted to make sure, we were initially under the impression that we were going to be redistricted when all of redistricting was going on. We received an email, everybody was asking for our home addresses, wondering, and that's what we were anticipating, a redistricting. Then we received a letter that we weren't going to be redistricted. Well, that's when we went into our workload, and that's the only thing that we could try to base it on, was trying to make sure that our workloads were tried to even out. Now, as far as somebody getting drawn out of a district or something, I don't know how I would know where somebody who's going to try to run against me or another person lives that's running for office. So I don't know. And so if somebody was drawn out and they want to be drawn back in for some reason, okay. but we don't have any specific data that shows that somebody's running for office and that's going to make some their address or if they're drawn in or drawn out. That was never a consideration.
When did you start? I mean, the process. Was everybody brought together, or what was the attempt to bring everyone together to discuss?
I had discussed with Sergio, and Ralph had discussed with Lisa about, or Judge Woodard, about having to trade some precincts or move some into her district. She said that she would immediately look at it. She didn't know if that was going to work for her. Apparently, the next day, her and her constable called back and said, "We're not interested in that."
When did that? I mean, you're saying that. I mean, was that yesterday or was
when was that? Right. Go ahead.
Come to the mic.
Pardon me for interrupting, but my colleague characterized Judge Swearingen as making the call, and I made the call.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. But, I mean, there's a lot of things going on. But I made the call to Judge Woodard because I try to have a good relationship with everybody, and I said, "Judge, interested in seeing if there's something we can work here." And she immediately gave me a hard no. I said, "Well, ma'am, if you will think about it for a day, please think about it for a day, because I'm trying to work with people." And she called me. She said, "Okay, I'll think about it for a day." So she called me back the next morning. This was in, I want to say it was in September, early mid-September. It certainly was. Okay, okay. I was looking on my phone for a record of the call, but it was well over a month ago. And the next day she called me back and I got a hard no. And so I had gotten under the weather with COVID, and I had some big, I was working a number of things and had a lot of balls in the air. And I told Jason, I told Judge Charbonnet that I wasn't hopeful about this. And but I said, "Well, I'll help. I'll do whatever I, do it. I'll be a team player." And so I, as the administrative judge, which up to that time I was kind of working as the administrative judge, Judge Charbonnet said, "I'll work it." I said, "You got the stick." And that, that's what I know about that particular interchange. Thank you, sir.
Judge Berger, do you want to talk about? Do you want to come up and explain your interaction too?
Well, yes. So understand that when I made my phone calls to Judge DeLeon, first of all, this hasn't been backhanded. This hasn't been slight. I have an issue with that, but made several calls to him, made them in May, made them in June, made them in July. We were waiting for the census data to come out. I haven't been through this process of redistricting. I didn't know how this was going to go. I was waiting on the lead from how the county was going to handle redistricting. When we found out there wasn't going to be redistricting, yes, I've been on the phone call many times. I've contacted Rick Barnes. I've contacted several people in reference to this because, once again, my precinct's in the middle of the road, but I know there's other precincts where their workload is extremely high, and there's other precincts where the workload is extremely low. And you can look at 4-year and 5-year statistics, I believe, that y'all were provided in reference to that. So in reference to the last phone call was with Judge DeLeon in reference to this, he did say that he would send me over, if I would send him the precincts over that I was interested in, he would look at them when he had time. Now my reference to that is because, like he said earlier, he's on the board of the redistricting for Fort Worth ISD, and he advised me that he was busy because he was the plaintiff of a lawsuit with Fort Worth ISD on the redistricting. We're in a short time frame here. We were. This was last week's phone call. This was a very short time frame that we were having to try to put this together. And, he didn't seem to be interested. So.
I have some questions,
Yes,
but
ma'am.
before I move on, I believe that Judge Woodard was going to make some, additional remarks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Judge, that's not true. I talked to Judge Brandt on Friday, October 1st, and he called and asked me if I would be interested in taking in some districts.
Friday, October 1st?
October 1st, yes, sir. And I did not give him a hard no. I said, I don't know if I want to go that far north. And he said, well, Judge, can you do me a favor and just think about it? He said, I'm going to send you some precincts, and can you just think about it? I said, you know what, Judge Brandt, I'll do that. I said, as a matter of fact, I'll call my constable and we'll go out and take a look. I did not respond. In fact, it wasn't the very next day. It was Tuesday, October 5th, and I sent him a text message. And I said, hey, Judge, my constable and I went out to see the precincts that we discussed in reference to adding to precinct number 8, which was the 7 precincts that have already been added as per that map. I said we both agreed that they would not be a good fit for precinct 8 and respectfully declined to add those precincts to District 8. And he said, thank you, Judge, and that was on October 5th, and I never heard anything else about redistricting until Sunday.
Okay, thank you.
I have some questions for Judge Charbonnet.
Go ahead.
So I was presented a map at 11:53 this morning. This map, I'm not sure what version of the map it is, but I think GK, you were going to maybe add to something about what version of the map.
I think that when Judge Woodard was on, she said, is this the correct map? And I think she held up a map that she had received yesterday. And there's some minor changes on this of the, I know.
Up at the top, I think there was one precinct in.
The JPs had said, no, that's the same map. And so I wanted to make sure that everyone was clear that the map that was shown yesterday, there's changes that were made. It may not have been very many, but it's not exactly the same.
Yeah, up at the top, precinct 1 and precinct 4, where they come together, there was 2 precincts up there that were already supposed to be in 1, and they were drawn out, so they were just included back in there. And then there was one that was drawn out of precinct 8 that was not supposed to be, or I think it's precinct 8, and it was added back into where it was supposed to go. That was only 2 deals. I thought that was the same one. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay. So then who, of this map that I'm holding, who drew this map?
It was drawn by a consulting company called Murphy Nasica.
Okay. And then at what point we'll just stick with this version of the map. At what point was this version of the map conveyed to the county, and who was it provided to?
The minute I received it, I sent it to Judge Whitley, and I sent it to Chandler, and it was immediately sent. I don't know exactly what they did with it at that point.
I think it was sent out to the commissioners.
Okay.
No, I have not seen any maps. I literally saw this map I time-stamped it myself at 11:53 a.m. this morning.
Mr. Banias, did you send out maps yesterday?
I did send them out. I sent it out to the JPs and constables because I didn't know if all the JPs and constables were even aware that this item was going to be on the agenda, or if they had seen the map.
So you didn't send them out to the commissioner?
No, I did not.
I had not seen this map until you called this agenda item.
Okay. It was my understanding that that GK was sending them out to you.
Nope.
Okay. And I should have sent it out to you, and I apologize. It was not intentional not to include anyone.
Okay. So then other questions about the map, and maybe these questions aren't for you, Judge Charbonnet, but for perhaps the GK or Bob Heath, has this map been reviewed by our lawyers, by Bickerstaff lawyers?
From what I've been told, yes.
Okay, I would like for them to come up and address the map.
Okay.
I'm sorry. What was your request, ma'am?
Bickerstaff, if Bob Heath could come and address the map. Hi, how are you?
Pardon?
How are you?
Just fine, thank you.
Good. Okay. So you or someone on your team has reviewed this map?
I beg your pardon?
Have you or someone on your team reviewed this map?
Yes, we got a map yesterday around noon or so and input it into the system, and I reviewed that. And we sent data on that back to the county. There were the minor changes that last night or sometime I found out about those as I was driving up, and we had somebody in the office put that in. I saw those when I got in 30 minutes before the meeting.
Okay.
But they were minor. They did not change things significantly.
Okay. So then this map has been evaluated by what type of criteria?
I beg your pardon?
What criteria was used to evaluate this map?
Well, when I looked at it, I did not look at any of the things that we've heard today about the process and who talked to whom and things like that. I looked basically at the numbers.
Not the caseload numbers, but...
Not the caseload numbers, that's right. But just the racial and ethnic balance, and look back at some of the election data. Obviously not a long, detailed analysis of election data, but I looked at the JP and constable returns for 2018 and 2020. And it seemed to me that while there are changes in several districts, the major changes were in 6 and 2.
Okay.
And 2 is the one that has probably the most voting rights impact.
And describe that impact.
All right. Into it was a district that I think was politically competitive. In 2018, I think it elected a Republican JP. In 2020, it elected a Democratic constable. The constable was African American, or is African American. So it had elected a minority official. That had significant impact in the racial balance, in that it looks as if it may not be nearly as competitive in the future. And so that was the one that gave me the most, I thought was the biggest issue under the Voting Rights Act.
Would you call that retrogression?
I think that it could be characterized as retrogression. Retrogression is the Section 5 standard. Section 5 no longer applies. However, as we indicated in the initial assessment, that's something that we look at because it may raise a flag that would suggest a Section 2 problem.
Thank you. I do have additional questions. I don't think they're for you, though. Thank you, Bob.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I don't have additional questions for you. Okay. I'm not sure who to address this question to because it's been brought up by a number of speakers about the workload numbers. Now, I have seen previously some workload numbers from Judge Kernut, but I've not seen them for all of the JP courts, or constable courts. So who was supposed to provide those numbers to us? Because it's referenced as though we should already have them.
Well, I did. Like in July.
For your court?
No, for everybody.
Okay.
Wait, before Bob sits down.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Brooks.
I can be at your convenience.
workload measures are not a factor to be considered in redistricting in general or in redistricting as regards Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Is that not correct?
Well, let me step back a minute and give a broader answer. First, as we have said before, with the JP's justice precincts, those are not governed by one person, one vote. So that you don't have to have equal population, and so you can change those or not. You can do it this year, you can do it in a subsequent year, whatever, because you don't have to worry about one person, one vote. Workload is something that I think the commissioners could certainly consider in deciding how to draw a district, but still you have to look at voting rights implications. But workload can certainly be a factor.
That was a fine job of dancing on the head of a pin.
Well, I mean, you know, voting rights is still there. You've got to consider Section 2. But workload can be a consideration.
In the past, on the the JPs, when we've looked at JPs, it has been on a workload basis.
Yeah, I suspect that's the case. And that would be a normal consideration.
Okay. And then Judge Cornett, I think that you were coming up. So in September, late September, you did send me numbers, a spreadsheet that was up to July 2021.
Right. Right, and I've distributed that to, I think, most everybody now. And this is simple data. We have this. Every year when we go through the budget cycle, we look at our numbers. You pull it straight out of Odyssey. I've got 4 years worth of data broken down by JP caseload. And this is no secret to anybody. This workload is real. And when you look at and you extract out things like traffic tickets, which are primarily handled at the counter, those are not court workloads. When you take out things like debt claims, which I know Kenneth has a lot of debt cases, those don't typically go to trial. They don't end up they end up settling, getting default judgments, doing all these things. So when we're talking redistricting, and I believe at my heart that we have a lot of work to do to balance out these workloads, and we all know it. I mean, they're here. It's here.
I don't know. I'm certainly not challenging the workload numbers.
What I'm saying is that I believe a good redistricting process should take into account high-density populations, and Precinct 2 is high density. And along with that, the nature of our caseload, it doesn't matter about the color of our skin, minority, nothing. This is about what it brings to the court. And when you talk about lots of people in a very small populace, you're going to bring in small claims lawsuits. That's the nature of the beast. Those take time. You're going to bring in truancy. We've got a lot of work to do in Arlington. The pandemic did not help us. We've got a lot of evictions. My evictions historically have tripled, if not quadrupled, every single person in here. And it has been a navigating nightmare to get through it. Our numbers tell us what's coming is even more than what we've seen. Now, all I'm saying is that what the shifts that we have recommended in my precinct alone, I can speak to that very well, as opposed to what that shifts in caseload workload type. That's what we're looking at. And yes, the JPs do understand that. That's what we do all day long. And it is just a direct correlation of what power it takes these courts to get these cases through, to get these citizens the resolutions that they need. So I've got the data. I'm happy to hand you my copies of it for the past 4 years. It's through October 21st. And simply put, the shifts that we're recommending don't take into account color, anything like that. Takes into account what it's going to take to service our citizens in Tarrant County with our resources.
One of the things that I would say about because I know that budget looks at this every year, because we've talked about that before. Yeah. I talked with Candace last night to see if there was a way we could determine, based upon the precincts that were being moved, what percentages of the cases those precincts represented within. Unfortunately, our current court package, Odyssey, does not allow or does not specify, and I think that, so unfortunately, we couldn't say, okay, this precinct represents X percentage of the workload, or the evictions, or the debt claims, or anything along that lines, because that was one of the things that.
Well, and I know exactly the properties I'm talking about, if it were to exchange high density, low density. I know exactly what they are, and I know the exact, parameters of what that will bring, and it's just shifting of workload measures there.
So,
Your Honor, I would submit that workload measures is something that we deal with every year at budget time. That's why some courts have more employees than other courts.
And again,
is to address the resources needed to handle workload measures.
Yes, and to your point, Commissioner, yes.
It's not a matter of taking a hatchet to the redistricting map. We address that in other ways.
And I don't disagree with that, but that's simply adding people. We can't, or we have not chosen to add a judge. So you can add people and staff, but that doesn't give us any more time by the judge itself. And so I think that was the effort. Every year budget does decide, okay, we think they need one more person to help do the administrative part of it, but we have not considered, and I'm certainly not supportive of considering creating a second judge or justice or JP within one of the current 8 precincts.
Well, and again, I would just encourage you to look at the data, look at the numbers. If we could, in a perfect world, we come carve this thing out perfectly and get it more aligned to where we all service our community in a similar workload fashion. And it's just not that case right now. The data shows us that.
I would like to be able to look at the data and look at the numbers as regards the changes to this map. The fact is, that data is not available to us. I don't know. In fact, I can't even look at this map and tell you exactly what's going where.
I don't disagree.
It's not analyzable.
Well, and that's why I don't disagree. We're not going to look at a map, and we don't have the statistics based upon our court system. And so when I asked Jason, okay, what did y'all do? They said, we got with our staffs, we got with the judges, we said, where is the workload? What can we do to shift that? And this was the plan they came up with based upon that. Based upon them looking at the workloads and knowing in their own mind, in their own precincts, where the workload was coming from, and if they made shifts, what would help balance that out. Now, I agree, I like to look at numbers. Unfortunately, again, the system we have right now will not allow them or us to be able to go in and say, if I move this precinct out, it's going to move this many traffic tickets, it's going to move this many small claims, it's going to move this many evictions, it's going to be this many truancies. And even if we do, that doesn't mean that they're going to go to that new precinct or old precinct. What they're doing is they're looking at where they're coming from now in their own minds, and that's what Jason indicated to me was the reason for the shift.
That data on workload measures, while important, is not the major driver in my point of view. The major driver is what impact these changes have upon the ability of...
Did we lose Commissioner Johnson?
He may just...
He's still online. He may just...
Okay. I'm sorry.
What impact these proposed changes have upon Black and brown and Asian communities to elect or at least have impact on electing the candidate of their choice. And that data is not available to us as regards this proposed map. It's not something I can make a decision on because I can't analyze it.
Yeah. And while the workload numbers aren't a secret, for all intent and purposes, this map certainly was a secret. Again, because I just saw it for the first time at 11:53 this morning. That's ridiculous.
And I probably saw it for the first time after 11:53 this morning.
Are there other people that want to speak?
Yeah,
Yes,
we got
thank
some
you,
other
Commissioner
folks.
Fickes.
First, I have Bishop Kenneth Spears.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Bishop.
Let me just share, I am neither justice of the peace or constable. I am, however, I believe a stakeholder in our city. I was sitting earlier and I didn't get a chance to say to Ms. Wilson what kind of great job she has done. As a matter of fact, she and I share the same birthday, so we do our best to beat each other every year at making the first call. While I was sitting there, I was thinking last night about 12:30. You know, I'm a preacher, pastor. Anybody that knows me know that I believe in prayer. And I was in prayer about today. I couldn't understand how what I was hearing was one-sided. One-sided in that you had a group of individuals who planned, prepared information, data, carving, cutting in terms of mapping, but not inclusive of everybody. I began praying, and I prayed about 1:05. I wanted to be accurate. 1:05 a.m. this morning, and sir, the Lord brought you to my mind. And here's what God said: you need to appeal to the soul of that man. 26 years ago, I was here, Dion Baxby was sitting there. I came in to do a prayer, and you were sitting in this area. I was nervous, I was trembling because it was my first time coming to the court. You said to me, it's going to be all right. You said to me, when the time comes, do the prayer and stand there for even the, what we do with the flag. Pledge allegiance. You said to me, welcome home. I don't know how you knew I was coming back home, but you gave comforting words. During the time of COVID, you were in the hot seat. You really were in a hot seat. And I was praying for you because I wanted you to make every right choice and every right decision. And I believed that my prayer would get through to God. Last night I began to pray for you again because as you're preparing to close out in terms of your tenure, you want to make sure that you leave out with a good representation. And I think that you are fair and you're honest. You are a great representation in terms of what it means to have a county judge. And I don't think that it would be a great mark for you to leave out with this mapping changed on your watch. I think that really in a real sense, and I'm appealing to the God in you, in a real sense, you have to begin to look at if in fact this was legitimate, all of these justices of the peace and constables would have been brought to the table at the same time to participate in the process. That hasn't been done, and it hasn't. When we talk about transparency, that hasn't been done. Everything that has been shared has been completely off the page in terms of who you are as a man and who you are as a judge. And I pray that you will consider the words I'm sharing. I wouldn't even be here unless God woke me up at 1:05 a.m. and said, come talk to you. I'm closing. I asked God for three things. I said, Lord, if that's what you want, give me a place to park. I said, God, if that's what you want, give me a place to sit up close. And then thirdly, God, give me an opportunity to talk. I'm parked downstairs. I had a great easy walk. I sat in the chair I sat in 26 years ago when I met you for the first time, and I'm speaking today. God bless you.
God bless you, sir. Kalisha Lyons.
Good evening, Judge and Commissioners Court. Bear with me just a moment. I wrote my little spiel out because I didn't want to leave anything out. My name is Kalisha Lyons, and I reside at 4513 Chaparral Creek Drive. I've lived in this community since 1997, and prior to moving to Fort Worth, I lived in a little city 115 miles north of Dallas. So I'm a country girl. In my hometown, my church, my courthouse, my grocery store, my school were within 5 miles of each other. Before moving to Fort Worth, I looked over Fort Worth and I selected the neighborhood that I live in. I selected this neighborhood because I heard about the great things about the community, the families who lived here, the leadership, and it reminded me of my hometown. I raised my children, 4 children, in the Crowley ISD School District, which is also that resides in Precinct 6. My church is in the area of Precinct 6. My sub-courthouse is in the area of Precinct 6. My current constable is in the area of Precinct 6. And my justice of the peace is in Precinct 6. The courthouse is close to my home, and I interact with the employees who work at this location. Like many of the residents of Precinct 6, we have built relationships with our leaders and have become accustomed to calling Precinct 6 our community. Throughout my years of living in this community, I have volunteered with many organizations and community events. But however, I discovered on yesterday my address, which is in District 6, and my precinct is 1641. I discovered on yesterday afternoon that there was a map going around for redistricting Precinct 6. I am appalled to call to the action being taken without the input of the residents of Precinct 6, which is the community where I live. The splitting of our community could cause many of our families to feel displaced and not a part of this close-knit community. The proposed map is a prime example of gerrymandering and doesn't reflect the growth in a growing population of our county. I am here this morning to appeal to you to not approve this map. I want to take it a little bit further. I was a candidate in 2020, running for constable at that time. Like I said, I'm a hard worker, I grew up in this community. I have raised my children to respect the community and the leaders that are in the community. But I also want to say this. I've looked at this map, and I've also looked at the voting for 2020. If you take a close look at this map and you look at how this map was drawn and compare it to the 2020 election, you will see how they came up with these results. And it still shows you that it's gerrymandering. Again, I thank you for listening to me, and I hope and pray that you understand that I'm a concerned citizen, first of all. And I don't think that our leaders should be acting in this manner when you give someone a day's notice and then ask them to vote on it. So I'm asking you this morning or this afternoon to please vote no and reconsider in the future looking at redistricting. Thank you so much.
Steve Maxwell.
Judge Whitley, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to address you. You may be thinking, what is this old has-been right out of the yesterday's news coming up here to address this Commissioners Court meeting? Well, I'll tell you why I'm here. I'm here because yesterday, for the very first time, I learned that there was an effort to redraw the lines of the JP and Constable precincts in Tarrant County. And for the reasons that you've already heard discussed a number of times, the things that went into this are things that have not been revealed to most of us who are interested in it. We didn't even know until today who prepared this map. Most of us have not seen this map until just now. You talk about transparency in government, what we have seen here is the exact opposite of transparency. All of the things that go into these decisions have not been done. And you know what? At the very least, you know what I would like to know, and I think everybody else would too? The people who prepared this map, did any of them make contributions to Judge Charbonnet's campaign?
No.
These are things that we would like to know. Maybe they haven't, but we sure are entitled to address this carefully enough where all those questions are answered. Now, the lack of transparency, why would they do this? Well, I'll tell you why they did this. Because if this map actually went into effect, it would mean that 2 of our present sitting justices of the peace would not have opponents in next year's election. Because you see, these new lines are going to draw right out of the precinct 2 people who have already announced their candidates for justice of the peace. They will not even be residing in the precincts they thought they would be represented. Now, you think, well, so what? Big deal. You've got plenty of time to get new candidates and oppose whoever you want to. No, you don't. And I'll tell you why about that too. These are justice of the peace races. Justices of the peace are judges. And just as you all know, when judges file that application for a place on the ballot, they must also submit 250 signatures of voters who support them in connection with that application. Well, if you're a district judge candidate or a county judge candidate, that's pretty easy because you can use voters from any place in the county. But if you're a justice of the peace, you can't. Your 250 signatures are going to be limited just to your precinct. And that is not an easy job to get those signatures from that small segment of the county. And in fact, it's exactly why every single judicial candidate begins the process of gathering their signatures months and months before the filing period was reached. Now, let me just leave it with this. This process that has not followed the way things should be done is a disgrace. Exactly 1 year ago, Judge Whitley, I sat in several meetings chaired by you, which addressed very important voting issues, and those meetings showed What can be accomplished when the parties work together and an opportunity is given to discuss every angle of a problem that may be posed? This process needs to be done exactly the same way, because as it is, it's not fair, it's not honorable, it's not right, and as Mayor Moncrief used to say, it's not the Fort Worth way, and it is certainly not the Tarrant County way. I will remind you of one other thing, because this has been touched on and I think it's been glossed over. This map, as drawn, is going to basically destroy the Latino district that was created in District 5. If any of these affected precincts are minority opportunity districts and the percentage of non-white voters is reduced below 50% in any of those areas, the Justice Department will automatically begin an investigation of what's going on, and we don't want that in Tarrant County. We are better than that.
Deborah Spell. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Judge Whitley and Commissioners.
Afternoon.
Redistricting, the decennial process to equalize population among electoral districts gathered from census data. It creates representational district maps in local and state communities. Retrogression, the act or process of deteriorating or declining, to move backwards, to recede, a shift toward a less perfect state. The proposed realignment of justice of peace districts violate Section 2 of the Federal Voting Rights Act. The proposed maps results in intentional discrimination. It obliterates the opportunity for Black and brown citizens in precincts 2, 6, and 7 to elect the candidate that represents our values and issues. This is the definition of retrogression in boldface. Although judicial districts do not require equal population, community of interest should remain when drawing precincts and districts. Legacy districts were created by the Commissioners Court in 1981. Precincts 5 and 8 allowed African American and Hispanics to elect their candidates of choice. The change in demographics has allowed justice of peace in precincts 2 and 7 the ability to elect the candidate shown in the 2018 and 2020 elections. This minority-majority coalition has strengthened to make the possibility of electing a candidate in Justice of Peace Precinct 6. I am opposed to looking back and regressing to being voiceless. There's a reason why the rear view mirror is small and the front windshield is so large. Where we are headed is so much better than what we left behind. Representation is important. Keep democracy alive. Please, commissioners, vote against this realignment in precincts. Thank you.
Lon Burnham.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lon Burnham. I live at 2103 6th Avenue, and I've heard the word retrogression 2 or 3 times during this hearing. Thank you to Commissioner Brooks and Allen. I know that Commissioner Brooks specifically brought that up, and I know that former Chairman Maxwell did as well. I'm going to digress for a moment. Over 50 years ago, when I was a senior in high school, I spent a lot of afternoons as a volunteer at a Baptist church in the Lake Como community. And every time I passed that apartheid wall, I became angrier and angrier about the situation that we face. 50 years later, there is a very clear apartheid wall in this room today where you have the white elected officials promoting one concept, and you have every elected official of color that has spoken today talking about the unfairness and the retrogression. I think it's obviously unconstitutional, as does Commissioner Allen, but more importantly, frankly, at this time in history, I think it's totally immoral. Once again, we have a premier example of elected officials trying to choose their constituents instead of letting the constituents choose their elected officials. We have an example of behind-the-scenes negotiating by what is really a minority in this county of people that are disinterested in representing the best interest of everybody in this county. So I would just ask you to not only not vote on this map today because the commissioners have not had access to the information they are entitled to before they vote. I would say if you vote on this map ever, you should vote it down because it's probably illegal and it's definitely immoral. Thank you for your time.
Now, I was handed another audience participation from Francis De Leon.
Good afternoon. Is it okay if we mute Commissioners JD, because it's really distracting when others are trying to speak and he's
there.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just saying we are really deviating here.
What am I doing that upsets you?
It doesn't upset me. It's distracting with you chewing loudly with the chips while everyone else is taking this very serious.
I'm taking it very serious. That's the reason I'm sitting here.
Please, go on.
Okay, all right. Yo soy aquí como constituyente del condado de Fort Worth y de Tarrant County. Quiero nada más decirles y pedirles por favor su atención. ¿Por qué es que tuvieron todas estas juntas sin aprobación de los constituyentes, sin por lo menos pedir nuestro apoyo?
Mr. Manius, would you please start the clock?
I'll make it easy on you. I'll just do it in Spanish and in English. But my main concern, I don't want to sound like I'm repeating what everybody else has said. We already know that it was just unethical and improper. I would like to get a copy, a better and more clear vision of how was this meeting or these meetings, how did they take place? And so I just want a copy of those minutes of who all sat down and decided that a few people would be the voice of our large community. I heard Judge Kernot repeatedly say, minority nothing. Excuse me, minority everything, because you are chopping and hushing our voices. And then I also heard her say, look at the data. That's exactly what I'm here for. I would like to see the data. I would like to see the minutes to each meeting that took place that was decided. Do y'all have those minutes?
Are you asking me?
I'm just asking who was the...
You'll direct your questions to me.
Judge Whitley, I would like to know, were any minutes submitted for any of the meetings that took place in regards to this map and the redistricting?
We've had no minutes submitted to us.
Okay, duly noted. Really, that is my main concern, is that no one asked for constituents in Tarrant County, more specific, Precinct 5, which is where I live and where a majority of my family resides. I would like more transparency. If those minutes do become available, how can we access those?
Public information request would be the answer. I think you're, now, from that perspective, any meeting, but theirs is not, I don't know them. I mean, what are they required, DA? If they get together, is there any posting notice required for the JPs to meet?
So the question would be, is it a governmental body that's meeting? And so far as I'm aware, there is no official governmental body made up of just members of the Justice of the Peace Courts. So with that being said, if there's no governmental body, there would be no Open Meetings Act requirement to keep minutes.
Therefore, there's no requirement for them to have.
Okay, so it was like a closed-door meeting that decided what was best for the overall community?
It was not a posted meeting, if you're asking if it complied with the Open Meetings Act.
Jason, who all was invited? What meeting did you have, or what meetings have you had with regards to this, and who were invited to those meetings?
Ours were over a lot of them were,
Please stand aside so that he can. Please stand aside so he can.
They were, when we first got together, we talked about when we heard from Judge De Leon, and then we had
When you say when, please give us a date, or at least give us some idea of when was.
Okay, so whatever the dates were that Chris Gregory gave and Bill Brandt gave, after that, we knew that there was not a real interest, so we told them, I told them that if we need to draw a map, I could probably get a consulting company to do it, and then that's where it went from there.
And then did you have
There was
any
no
meetings?
formal meetings, no.
Did you have any recent, once the map was drawn, what was the process, and did you have meetings, and who were invited to those meetings?
Yes, we had a meeting actually last night to voice any concerns before this meeting today. All five, myself, Judge Brandt, Judge Swearingen, Judge Kernut, and Judge Gregory all showed up. Kenneth Sanders did call me and ask a few questions, and I believe I was able to answer those questions. But the other two justices of the peace stated that they do not agree with this, and they'll voice their opinions in court tomorrow.
So they didn't come to the meeting?
No.
Just one second. Okay.
Your Honor, the meeting
If you'll
invitation
come to
was
the mic,
submitted the day
Judge.
of. Your Honor, Commissioners, the invitation to meet to discuss the map was initiated the very same day. I don't know what time, but it's
You
like...
weren't able to make the meeting?
No, I was getting over a sinus infection, and I was out and about, but down and out for the count. But I was not able to make the meeting, but did convey that I would raise my objections here this morning.
Jason, when was everybody notified of the meeting that occurred at 5 yesterday?
Do y'all know the time for me? It's on a group text to everybody. They're going to look it up.
a.m.
11:48 yesterday morning.
Okay. Please continue.
Thank you so much. I just, the whole process, the whole manner in which it has come about is very concerning to me as a constituent. So I would like to know, like, maybe moving forward, I did hear someone saying how to build a redistricting committee, perhaps, or a process that is going to be more transparent to constituents, that will have access in plenty of time, not hours prior to or, possibly minutes before a meeting, like Commissioner Allen stated. I'm just really, really wanting to know more about how these meetings came about and how the input was not available to any of the constituents. That is all I have to say, and I would really, really hope that you see our concerns as a constituent and you raise those same concerns and strike this down. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that is all of the audience participation comments I have with regards to this particular item.
Judge, I move that we approve the map as submitted by the majority of the JPs.
I second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Please vote.
Nope.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks, do you want to vote? Motion passed. I don't think Commissioner Brooks.
We have lost the physical quorum.
No, you did not lose the physical quorum before I pushed the button to vote. The vote was, when I pushed the button, right there it was. Again, I'm not sure Commissioner Brooks intended that, but he was on the dais when the vote was taken. And Commissioner Johnson voted yes.
Judge, I would respectfully request that we take maybe a 5-minute break, so we just kind of to take a look at that and make sure that that was a valid vote, that we can go ahead and tally that vote. As of right now, I see four people have voted for, and Commissioner Allen has not voted. So we just have to take a look real quick and just see if we can take a 5-minute recess.
Okay, we can take a 5-minute recess.
You know.
Mr. Tidwell.
Can you hear me, Judge?
Wait just a second.
Just a second, J.D.
We ain't done with this by a long shot. Not ready to move on. And I would request that you wait a few minutes for Commissioner Allen. She's on her way.
Okay.
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks.
First of all, I would like to correct the record. And have my vote recorded as a no. Secondly, I'd like to make the point that the vote was not legal in the first place because there was no quorum present. Now, y'all parse that however you want to. Do with it what you will. The courts will decide whether or not there was a quorum present. Now you may go on.
So the vote, we're going to reflect the vote, and I'll ask the DA's office, can we correct the vote at this point in time? So we'll correct the vote to be 3 in favor, 1 against, and 1 not voting. Okay.
Explain that to me.
There was no.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Commissioner Allen did not vote. Ms. Tidwell.
I have 2 items that I'm asking the court to consider today. The first is to receive and file the auditor's report related to the Odyssey Financial Systems, financial and system controls. We're going to work with IT and the JPs to hopefully improve the process and strengthen internal controls.
Move
Move
to-
approval.
Move to receive and file. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And our other item is we're asking the court to receive and file the auditor's report related to the review of financial and system controls, specifically for Justice of the Peace Precinct 1, and you have attached the response.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
I move to receive and file the personnel agenda.
Second. We have a motion and a second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Judge, I'd like to take this last opportunity to remind employees that annual benefits enrollment is underway. Tomorrow is the last day. Tomorrow's the deadline for making your elections known for 2022. So if you've not made your elections, you need to do so by tomorrow midnight. You can find us on the third floor in the Benefits Center if you have questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Lee? Saw your husband calling balls and strikes a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, he told me. I said, make sure that you did not call a strike on Judge Whitley's granddaughter. He said, well, I didn't know which one she was. He said, yeah.
Well, she did strike out twice, but that's all right. She got a foul ball. And she struck. He didn't call her out. So.
All right, good deal. Good afternoon, court members. We have 4 items for your consideration. The first item is an award recommendation for bid number 2021-122. This is our annual contract for personal protective equipment supplies, awarding to the primary, secondary, and alternate vendors listed per unit price.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The second item is also an award recommendation regarding bid number 2021-153. This is an annual contract for disposable paper and plastic products, awarding to the primary, secondary, and alternate vendors listed in your court communique per unit price.
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And the third item is also an award recommendation regarding bid number 2022-015. This is our annual contract for printing and mailing of voter registration certificate cards, confirmation notices, and pre-printed stock for elections administration, awarding to the primary vendor Print Mail Pro, the secondary vendor Safeguard Forms and Systems per unit price.
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
And the fourth and last item is an approval of an invoice payment for translation services for the County Administrator's Office with Universal Technical Translation in the amount of $756. The department requested translation.
Was it $756 or $700?
$700.56.
Okay.
Sorry about that. This was requested. Go ahead and explain.
So we made a mistake, okay? We had a contract for translation services as related to our PSAs and all of our other material that we put out in 3 different languages. And we thought that the contract covered the bond-related public hearings, and we were wrong. But we had contracted with those individuals, they provided the services, and so we're asking the court to approve the payment.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson, you have a interlocal agreement on today.
I do with the Tarrant Regional Water District. Has this been approved by the DA's office?
Yes, Commissioner, yes.
Was that a yes?
Yes, he said yes.
Move approval of item 9J, 1A and B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Are there any appointments?
I have one, Your Honor.
Okay.
To the JPS board, replacing Elaine Close with Deborah Wakeland, Wakeland, and it's my understanding she has been approved. I would move for approval.
For the what board?
You said JPS, but you meant CPS,
I
didn't you?
said CPS.
CPS.
Child Protective Services.
He got me when he said they've been approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Court members, you have before you the claims, including the addendum.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Mayes?
Your Honor, members of the court, we have one additional item. This concerns training for the prevention of harassment and discrimination. This was something that the court had asked us to put on the agenda. We're ready to make that presentation. Would you prefer that we hold it a week, or would you like that presentation?
Please.
We'll hold it a week.
Yes.
We have a couple of public comments. First is Lon Burnham. Then next is Angie Delfino.
Mike Brewster.
He's coming up next.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Angie DeFilippo. I'm the political director for the Tarrant County American Federation of Labor. I'm here. We had a town hall last night that we invited everyone to. I understand there are time constraints. We are thankful that Commissioner Allen did come and speak to all the people who showed up. I did bring some notes.
Could you move the microphone?
Yeah. So I did bring some notes from people who wanted you to hear a little bit more about why they're concerned about how, in the process of which you approve tax abatements and entitlements. If you want to, so then, yeah, it's just a bunch of handwritten notes from them.
Tell me, could you repeat that?
So we had a town hall last night. We invited each and every one of you. It was about Rivian and different types of tax abatements and entitlements for jobs that are coming into Fort Worth. Despite, we understand there's time constraints, but members who did show up wrote y'all notes just about things that they're curious about, things that they wanted, answers to questions that they had, and such like that. I did want to say that Labor is going to be making a commitment to showing up to the commissioners' meetings such as this, to the city hall meetings as well, on a larger scale. So you'll be seeing a lot more people from our organization as well. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mike Brewster.
Howdy, how y'all doing today?
Good.
I'm Mike Brewster. I'm on 117 Oak Trail in the big city of Rendon. Last week I talked to you a little bit about, I was going to send you a letter. If it hadn't gotten there yet, it should be hitting your desk about today, maybe tomorrow. I've talked to Mr. Garcia about the issues that were there too. And I think we're kind of on the same track. I also mentioned last week that I'm a technician, been one for a long time. I'm not Don Quixote, don't tilt at windmills, and I don't like to fix things that aren't broke, but I'm seeing problems in our election systems. This ballot, this pencil, put two of them together, makes marks on a piece of paper. We should be able to give it to Ms. Johnson's 5th grade class and they can add it up and see what's going on, but we've got it more complicated than that. We spent several $1 million on equipment, cost tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands a year to maintain that equipment. and then we got to have staff and warehousing and all of that. Because that equipment is expensive, we tend to reduce the number of voting locations that we have, and that begins to cause crowding. They're supposed to make things faster, but in almost every election, you're going to hear a jurisdiction someplace that's got problems with the technology, and it's not working right, so the lines get longer, and that increases more pressure for us to make longer voting sessions for mail-in voting and for all those things that go along, and it's a problem that we created with technology. They don't break. They just don't break. So what I'm here today to warn you about is there's a growing movement in this country that we're going to try and get rid of those machines. Exactly what we're going to do after that, there's a lot of debate over, but I'm telling you, it's kind of time for y'all to start thinking about that, and I'm willing to be a part of that process. But there's a great deal of distrust. I don't think you can trust an IT system that is in this country anywhere. And Mr. Kersey and I just had some discussions. I mean, we have some amiable discussions. We actually like each other, but we also have some disagreements on some things. And the use of the machines and the security of those machines is among them. So what I'm here for today is just give you a heads up that this is coming. And in fact, I saw another woman mentioning some movement she was putting together just yesterday morning, totally disassociated from me. But this is coming. And I think you're going to see before the end of the year that there's probably going to be some movements across the country to make this happen rapidly. I hope so. If not, we're going to do it the long way, and I'll be having a whole lot of discussions with y'all about how to do. So, and with 11 seconds left, I'm going to say that I have seen 2 redistricting proposals come before this court, and I haven't been impressed with how either one of them was satisfied. It may be a subject for another long letter. Thank y'all.
Thank you, sir. I have no other requests for audience participation. There being no further business, and we have no reason to go to close. We stand adjourned in memory of
Daphne Brookins.
Daphne Brookins. Thank y'all.